cool. So as of today, it is the 2nd of December, 2022, and yesterday there was the big announcement of the new expansion, the Forbidden Sanctum. And yeah, we're gathered here today with the boys. That is Grimro and tytykiller. They don't need no introduction. These are, some of the most well-known blasters in Path of Exile. So yeah, it's really nice to have you guys on, and I'm very happy to, be here to discuss this sort of stuff with you guys. So first thoughts, what did you think of the announcement and that kind of shit?
Hell yeah, man. Okay. Well, I mean, I was kind of clenching the whole time. I was like, please be good, after the the incident of 3.19,
the Calandra incident.
Yeah, I mean, like from a mechanical standpoint and from like a gameplay point of view, the lead mechanic honestly looks pretty damn insane. Like it looks pretty dope. I'm pretty hyped up to try it out. I mean, they're pretty good at selling me on stuff though, so I don't know how good it'll actually be, but it looks pretty fun. Definitely looks pretty fun.
What do you think? So I like to look at it from two different perspectives. So I'll think of it as like the speedrunning perspective, like what do I get, and then I look at it as like the overall perspective, like what kind of things does everybody get? Do they get QOL? Do they get like new skills? Do they get like cool stuff? And for most people, I'd say that they got at least something. There's definitely a lot of juice. Everything in the announcement was really good until I read patch notes.
Yeah, fair enough. I think the patch notes might have left like a lot to desire in regards to maybe wanting to see some balance changes, some new stuff coming in to like freshen things up, and especially I think from the perspective of a speedrunner, so the first thing that like actually struck me, for example, for Melee, is the fact that they took away Spectral Helix in a way, right? It's not like it's completely dead, but it's sort of like it's just worse than before, and obviously going from the time where it's like something is good now and then it's just worse later, it never really feels good, even though it's like still fine. Like it's not like it just always feels like a step down, and to not have anything come and replace that, I can sort of see where you're coming from that perspective. So is that kind of how you felt with the patch notes letting you down, or is there something in specific that you were sort of like hinting at?
Oh no, that's pretty much it. It's like Helix is worse, and the way that Helix performs is that it needs to be kind of broken to make the clunkiness of it feel pretty good.
Yeah.
But all that ends up happening is that now if you have to cast like 3 or 4 times instead of 1 or 2 times, it's gonna feel really bad to use. So we're going back to like Shattering Steel instead. But Shattering Steel was nerfed in like 3.16 because of like the ailment changes.
Yeah.
And so we're back to using like the tech we used like 8 patches ago. But it's just worse than it has always been.
Yeah.
So it's more disappointing from my POV. Casters are still broken for speedrunning, but since there's probably about as many people that care about the lore as there are people that care about speedrunning, it's not a huge deal. It's just a little sad for me personally.
Yeah.
I actually have a question on that one.
Sure.
I'll let you go after this, Tuna. But so it sounds like we're kicking off on the topic of the skill balance and meta. So when I read the Helix nerf, obviously I was like, okay, I hate Helix. I don't really care. But that was my personal thought. But does this actually remove it as a leveling option for all of the melee builds that we're using it, like Venom, Gyre, and Lightning Strike, ROP? But is that now gone as an option? Do you think, Tai? Because you're kind of the master of leveling.
Pretty gone. I mean, you can still use it, but again, the clunkiness of it was completely made up for the fact that it was, I wouldn't say overtuned, but it felt really good to use, and that it actually like cleared stuff very easily. I think it'll still be a usable skill, but it's not like, hey, you're kind of an idiot for using Shattering Steel over this, but if you don't like the clunkiness of Spectral Helix, there's another option. Now it's more like, hey, you can very viably choose between these 2 different skills, but Shattering is most likely going to come out on top.
Which to some degree, if you look at it from the perspective of the developers, they probably achieved what they wanted to in that regard, because it's like, oh, well, now you're not forced into this because you have this. But the thing about those 2 options is that neither of them are actually going to feel great, right? Which is, from our perspective, is we just want to level and feel good. Like, we want our character just to feel good through the acts. And now, since we're going to have to be hitting a monster more times to progress through the acts as we were, in previous patches, it's just going to feel like a step down, as I think is like how it's going to feel. And like, sure, it will take some time to get used to it and stuff, but it feels like since a while now, since literally the nerfs to Orb of Storms and Stormbrand, especially in like the acts and speedrunning, and not even for speedrunning, and just like the leveling meta in general, which is a huge part of Path of Exile, especially for people getting into it and things like that. They might look into a leveling guide. How do I get through the acts fast? Or even, you know, returning players and stuff like that. So like, it's just been constant step downs, and this is just compiling on top of that in that regard. So, what do you guys think about that?
So I will say there is a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Let's say that all the meta cuck stuff, let's say it's all removed. There's no Orbistorm Stormblast Mine, there's no Armor Brand Crema, there's no Spectral Helix cheesing. What ends up happening is that because all these like super broken stuff is like nerfed, right? What you end up getting is that you can actually level with your Cold Dot build. You can actually level with your, you know, Shield Crush build. You could level with, you know, your Blade Storm or whatever skill you really want, because that's, you know, what you're playing in endgame, and you can slowly build up to that point. If these skills that shave off, you know, 10, 20 minutes off your leveling time are nerfed, all you end up with are a bunch of skills that are kind of sort of in a similar vein. And I found that people really dislike leveling with these like 20 button combo abilities, and they really like leveling with what they're going to play in endgame.
I mean, including myself, and I'm sure Grimro as well, but what are your thoughts on that, Grim?
Well, I mean, yeah, I didn't level as Helix. Like, I've died in Cruel Lab a few too many times using Helix, so I just used Shattering Steel. I was one of the people who downgraded myself.
Okay.
But when I was actually reading the melee skills, I actually thought of you, Tai. And one thing which I was very curious about from a speedrunning perspective, because we're on that topic, I thought the Vaal Cleave would be like the perfect speedrunning ability, because you can like steal the head on a buffs, right? And like you can just put it on another link, right? And just like call it, and then you've got head on a buffs. Is that not something which could maybe help with that? I don't know.
Another button.
So like the speedrunning meta for Ranger, right? If you're not going Poison Concoction, is Rain of Arrows. If you're going some sort of like bow Ranger build, it's Rain of Arrows. The issue with Rain of Arrows is you need Vaal Rain of Arrows, because otherwise your single target is Turbo AIDS. Now it's still playable. You can use like Rain of Arrows on your single target with Onslaught, and then use a Ballista with Rain of Arrows, and you have like decent like clear and decent single target. But you really want that Vaal Rain of Arrows to be juiced. And I'm worried that like melee will be in a similar vein, where it's like, okay, well, I really need Vaal Cleave, and ducking into these side areas is going to take me, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, and then there's another 30 seconds, and these few minutes really add up when your time is, trying to push world record.
Yeah.
So it turns into like a situation of like, oh, I didn't get MS and I didn't get Vaal Cleave. Like, it's not good for speedrunning, in my opinion. I do think that Vaal Cleave is going to be kind of cool for like any sort of like twink leveling, though. If you're leveling a second character, I think it's a really cool skill.
Yeah, it could be. On that note, though, they did introduce a new melee skill, which is like a combination between Tech Slam and Molten Strike, basically. I forget what it's called. It's called Magma something, if you guys want to correct me on that one. Like, actually, I have it right here. It's called Volcanic Fissure. That's the one, yeah.
Oh.
So it has 80% base attack speed with 110% damage, and we don't have the level 20 gem levels yet, so we don't know whether it fires more than 4 projectiles or something like that. But it has already innate fire conversion as well, and 0 flat damage. You get it at level 12, so it could be used early for melee builds, but...
So I think, I mean, look, I'm not really a Molten Strike enjoyer, but a lot of people are comparing this to Molten Strike. But the way it looked to me is, and the way Chris explained it, is that you can overlap all of the projectiles coming out of the eruption, right?
Yes.
So theoretically, you should be able to also hit the boss with the actual hit. So that should be 550 base power at level 1, maybe, if you hit everything, right?
Well, no, because the projectiles deal 50% less damage, right? So there's that element to it where...
110, and then...
And we also don't know exactly what if there's like an AoE breakpoint to all the projectiles, but assuming that everything goes, if you can hit everything, and also the fact that maybe we'd be getting projectiles as it levels, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably a little bit less likely, but yeah, it's possible.
Yeah,
but yeah, there might be a helmet.
The issue I see with it, for leveling's sake, is like, it kind of has to be like turbo overtuned broken, because if it overlaps all the projectiles, you're going to run LMP with it. You're going to want to run like, lesser volley with it eventually or whatever. And that comes in a situation where like using Poison Concoction, you really need like LMP, and volley, and if those numbers don't look very good on poison concoction, the skill itself is just kind of dead, right?
Yeah. I think you're also going to want to sort of find a balance between the projectiles and the strike itself, which I sort of feel like that's the way they kind of wanted to balance it with the projectiles themselves. And also, I assume that it might also be a mechanic where the more projectiles you have, the more they spread out, because that's what they did to Molten Strike, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I can't remember.
Not sure.
I think it's sort of like a like a mechanic where like you can't get to ridiculous like shotgunning, so they focus they try to sort of get you to a point where you have a certain amount of projectiles, but not to where like you just want to stack projectiles. It's like at a point it might be better to focus on like more multipliers, right? Essentially.
Yeah, I mean, also projectiles are just inherently better than, you know, other hit-based like damage types, because you can get the doggo, hello. You can get the projectile curse. The what is it called? The sniper's mark. Can you get point blank with melee skills anymore like that? I can't remember if you can or not.
Yeah.
I've worked with projectiles, yeah.
Yeah, so I think you know, it could be pretty damn good, pretty strong if you stack both of those things on top of each other, because they're obviously massive multipliers. Maybe that makes up for the projectiles.
Yeah.
Sure.
I just wish we saw like at the very least some added damage to it. You know, some like physical damage or something like that. It feels like there was a point in time where they were like, okay, we've recognized that, you know, melee skills, they kind of need some help early on, especially considering that this is a level 12 skill. You know, it would go a long way to get like some additional physical damage on the gem itself, or fire damage, whatever you want to do with it. But we sort of regressed back to where it's like they just give us base damage and that's it. So that's kind of weird, actually.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It is kind of strange.
It's been a bit of a theme, actually, because like the skill I'm looking to league start also doesn't have any base damage on it, which is Artillery Ballista, which it's actually kind of similar to what we're talking about. But it only has like a base power of... Wait, go ahead.
This goes a little disparaged, I'm going to be honest.
Oh,
so it feels a little sad to use sometimes, especially early on.
Really? You don't like it? I think it's pretty strong.
I'm not a fan.
I think it's pretty strong, but yeah.
I can try a run, but just some of the deets.
Well, it's definitely not for everyone, but yeah, that's what I'm starting. I think it's pretty strong. But yeah.
Oh, okay.
For sure. But yeah, I think the base damage is definitely missing on a lot of gems, which could definitely use it.
For sure.
Sure.
Definitely. I think that's probably a good segue into maybe talking about like the skill gems in general. At least what we've seen so far. There's gonna be like more teasers and announcements coming through. So this is like the day after the announcement. So they've shown us so far 4 gems. We got Frozen Legion as well, which basically is like it's almost like a new archetype of skill where it's a spell, but it uses your melee weapon. So essentially it creates like 6 statues around you and they all strike with your skill. I personally think it's like one of those things that they're designing for the future. But it's not really got like a place in Path of Exile just now yet because of the limitations of, you know, socket gem links, and also the fact that I don't think there's many other skills that synergize with it per se. But I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on this?
I think it's really cool to move away from totems for melee, because totems are so like ingrained with melee. That's like, all right, I gotta drop the protector, the whatever totem. Sometimes you're using protector and the other totem, and then you're dropping your Vaal totem, and you pop on Vaal VMS, and then you pop in like your war cries, and then you pop in your slams or whatever melee ability you're using, and it just feels really clunky to play. I think if we remove the whole totem stuff, and we're just like, all right, I'm summoning like ice soldiers. I think that's a cool idea. If that's where it leads up being eventually. Yeah, War Chief is what it's called.
I could see it being very satisfying to use in that regard, yeah. Sorry to cut you off, Grim, go ahead.
No, you're good. I mean, I just don't really know like what the skill is necessarily like for, right? Because like, I mean, when I saw it, I was like, oh, okay, so this is some sort of a single target kind of like juicing button on the bosses, right? Because it's got the charges. You can't really clear with it, right? It's a bit awkward unless you have like insane cooldown reduction or something like that. But I can't really imagine zooming around, clicking on altars and like, oh shit, I don't have any charges right now, and just die in one hit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's kind of like a big cooldown that you pop on bosses. But at the same time, it didn't seem like it had the numbers to back that up from what I can see so far. What do you guys reckon?
Yeah, I agree. If it actually ends up being good, I'd be very happy though. I think it's a cool ass skill. I think the idea of like encountering something difficult as melee, where you're like bone shattering for like 3 minutes straight or whatever on a boss, and then you get to pop that, and then boom, it explodes. That's a really cool moment.
One thing to consider though about this is that it converts to cold. I don't really understand why they forced that onto the skill gem itself. I guess it goes, it's like Frozen Legion and everything, but it's sort of like very limiting in a way, because most melee builds, it's like either I go Fizz, or most of the time bottom left is like fire, right? Like you wouldn't really be converting to cold unless you're playing Frostblades.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's kind of like looking to be like a bit more of a ranger skill or something along those lines, so you can convert to cold over there. But like I remember like deck stacking, like spectral throw and stuff like that, which
True.
I've seen like Mathel play.
Yeah,
maybe you can like play it with something like that. Just for curiosity's sake, does it use spell crit? Like do you have to get like increased spell crit, or can you use like crit on like the attacks as well, or is it both?
See, it basically just uses your weapon, so it's your attack crit that's applied, but the thing itself is a spell, and it's not. It's not scaled with spell damage. What's
the point of it being a spell then? I don't understand. Like if it's not scaled by like can you use like let's say can you use like spell support gems on it, right? Because it's a spell technically, right? Can you use like spell cascade or whatever?
No,
I'm assuming so.
You can use faster casting. And like
you wouldn't be able to use like spell echo on it because it would just use it again at one charge.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But I do think that it'll probably scale with like spell modifiers or like support gems, which makes me think like this might be a replacement for your 4-link totem setup, as you have a 4-link warrior setup.
Yeah, I mean that could be maybe like a pretty broken interaction or something like that, in some way, shape or form. But maybe like spell echo would make them, do like multiple spins, per release. I don't know. That's like some pretty hopium right there.
On the skill gem itself, it says this skill cannot be triggered, supported by spell echo or unleashed, or used by totems, traps, or mines. So let me just squash that real quick.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Nice
okay.
try.
Well, yeah. Yeah, we got close, but I'm sure there's something that you could probably do, which might be interesting. But it sounds like it can be supported by stuff on the skill tree, which is spells, though, right?
Yeah.
And someone just said battle cry mage. Yeah, no good. Battle mage. Nope.
Yeah, this put it into a weird position because you're not, as a melee build, you're not really going to be picking up all this like spell damage. You're not going to be picking up elemental damage. You're not really going to be picking up like cold damage for most builds. So it is left in a state where like it needs to have good numbers, but if it has good numbers and you do scale those things, then it would be absolutely insane. So I think they're in a bit of a pickle with this skill.
I just think it's like not really yet supported by the current state of the game, but it's something where they're sort of like indicating that they might want to go in this direction for PoE 2. Maybe there's like a new ascendancy or a new archetype, like a Spellblade type of archetype, Brian, where you're like, like kind of going in between those two things.
I think honestly it will really come down to people like getting in game and playing with it, because so many times in the past there's been skills which people have taken, they've actually like tried, and then they've actually ended up being meta, right? Like EA Ballistas, I would have been like, ew, what? No, gross. But you put all that effort into it, right? And like there's like the Venom Gyre builds, which have like really started to pop off lately.
Well, you can even consider like RF, if you think about it.
RF. Exactly. And like even though like tytykiller was like, ew, artillery ballista, like I'm sitting here going, hell
true.
It's gonna be so good.
What if?
Like I had a pretty good time, at least with my leveling. Maybe it's not a speedrunning thing, but I think maybe there is some potential there with not only the 2 new skills, maybe, but I think maybe some of the Vaal skills. I'd really like to hear what you guys have to say about some of those, because I'd like to call out Vaal Caustic as maybe being a potential winner, because it kind of fits into an already powerful build, right? You can not only do it with Caustic Arrow by itself, which could be okay, but you can combine it with like Caustic Arrow and the poison rain. Someone help me! And then you can maybe have a third layer of poison all on a boss at the same time, right?
You mean Toxic Rain?
Toxic Rain.
So essentially, like it's those are all overlapping dots, and it can be used like both as like, because Caustic Arrow is very good I don't know if you saw Palstron made a build guide for it last league, and it's Caustic Arrow Ballistas. And Caustic Arrow is like the mechanic where it has very high base damage and has a potential to shotgun as well if you use like volley or GMP or whatever, right? Depending on how much AoE you have and stuff like that, so that you can apply multiple poisons per shot. And on top of that, if you're gonna be able to, have like a crazy Vaal variant of that, as like usually Vaal skills have like very high base damage or a high multiplier to them. I'm sure they'll be pretty conservative about the numbers because it seems like they're really conservative about the numbers on everything they release these days. But I think it's still gonna be like it's essentially for free that you get that. So no matter what, you're gonna win, right? Regardless, if you're playing that build, it's just gonna be better.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely a winner. What else did we get that's like fairly new as far as like Vaal things are concerned?
Well, I think the other one, which I was probably looking at, was the Vaal Venom Gyre, obviously because that is obviously pretty flavor of the month these days. So
Right.
people are really enjoying that one. It's like, okay, what could that be, right? Like, they could double down on the map clear kind of area of it because it is pretty zoomy skill. Like if it throws out like a bajillion blades, kind of like the Vaal Fireball kind of style, and then they all get sucked up and you blow them all out again with the whirling blades.
Let's take it easy.
You're
getting too excited here, man. You're like, and then what if it like pops off and then it like boom explodes the map boss and then like 30,000 monsters appear and then boom they all explode.
Just spits right out.
Let's be a bit more realistic. It's gonna be another winner because the skill itself is already good on its standalone. Having a Vaal variant of it just makes it slightly better. It does these kind of like Vaal skills do kind of hurt hardcore in a way because you really want to have like good uptime on like VMS, Vaal Molten Shell.
Right.
But for the most part, you're not really popping that until you get to like something super dangerous or the boss. So I think that being able to use Vaal skills is really cool, so long as like the amount of other buttons that your build has suppressed isn't like already super high.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys? I think there's a few others. Like the new skill got a Vaal variant as well that we were talking about before. The new Meatball Fisher. It's maybe it like fires out like 12 meatballs. Being conservative with my numbers there, so Tata doesn't get too excited. Like that could solve the single target problems with that build as well potentially, which could be pretty good.
They'll take the projectiles from Lightning Strike and they'll put them there. That's the Vaal variant.
Absolutely, man.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't talk about Vaal skills and not talk about Vaal Flicker Strike. Like that shit is like looks pretty wicked.
Yeah.
It looks kind of meme.
It's definitely meme, but it's pretty wicked. And considering that you can apply it on single target, it's like that's kind of cool. No, I don't know. Like it's just like 25 hits on single target. That's like it's like literally an anime move. It's like bah, 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 and then you end.
Oh, I know. Dude.
And then the boss just goes. Dah. I don't know. I think that's pretty cool.
No, it definitely looks really cool. It depends if you can scale down the explosion time or whatever, or if you can just mitigate it in some way, shape, or form. Because having like a full like half a second or like 1 second where like things can just hit you.
You're inside like a degen and your character just dies, and the boss just stands there like.
you have like no leech because you're not actually doing damage during that moment in time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing I was asking myself when I saw that skill is like, okay, well, why wouldn't I just keep flickering normally, right? Because it's like the same thing, but you just deal the damage delayed, right? Is it like got some crazy multiplier or something?
It's a higher multiplier, I believe, and it also attacks way more times.
It has 300%
like what you could
base attack speed as opposed to 120%, right? So that's already like huge multiplier, and the base damage is the same. So essentially, it's just like
is it?
It attacks like more than twice as fast.
I think a lot of the Flicker Strike characters actually already hit attack speed cap in some cases anyway, though, so that might be a problem. But yeah, I think it could be pretty cool for sure. And then, of course, oh, you go ahead, Tai.
I was going to say, if you don't need as much attack speed, you could juice it in other ways.
I think one thing to keep in mind, though, is that it gives it 30% chance for a Frenzy Charge on hit, and I'm pretty sure it only consumes the charges once. So it's almost like a Frenzy Charge fuel stop, in a way.
Yo.
Because like sometimes Flicker Strike, maybe until maybe you get like... like I think Raider has like a pretty decent easy time on it, but... maybe if you want to play like Flicker Strike Layer or something. Yeah, you have like a harder time with Frenzy Charges. You need to like elevate gloves with Frenzy Charge. to be able to sustain that. Maybe this will help a little bit with that until you get that, but I mean that's just band-aid. But it's something to consider, I guess.
Yeah, because my initial thought was like, if you're playing Conflicted Strike build, you've probably already got the Frenzy Charge situation on lockdown, but there's no real solution to making it work early because you do need those Frenzy Charges to make it actually feel crisp and clean.
Yeah, but the problem as well is that like usually you sort out your Frenzy Charge situation for clear and stuff. That's no problem at all. But for single target is the only place where you might actually run out from time to time, right? So I don't know, like unless your build is like min-maxed, then you don't have to worry about this stuff, and it's just a cool button to press. But if you're not at that point yet, then it's just like, yeah, it's nice, it's free, and it's a more damage multiplier. So again, it's like just it doesn't cost anything, right?
I will say though that like after talking with the boys here, it has made me come to a realization that maybe in speedrunning, you hit like Prisoner's Gate or one of the early zones, and you find a Vaal side area, and you go into it as a melee build. And you encounter one of the new like 20 Vaal gems that you get from melee, and even though you're playing, Shattering Steel or Splitting Steel, one of those two, even though you're playing one of those, you find a Vaal skill and you're like, cool, I'm gonna completely transition over the build into whatever this is, and it's gonna be pretty likely for you to find, like hopefully something good.
Yeah,
I was actually gonna say that because, like, I mean, like, you guys, some people in chat was saying, like, okay, it actually doesn't consume any frenzy charges. I don't know if that's true. Like, couldn't you just use it on any build and just like juice up some frenzies and then just like get a big hit in or something? Like, that'd be good early on.
You'd have to have the weapon type for it, but yeah.
Yeah, and you also it has a cost, right? Like the fact that you actually have to use it, and then your character's doing this whole thing.
Yeah.
So you can't. I don't think you'd use that to juice your frenzy charges.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, if you wanted to use frenzy charges, you could just run like a frenzy setup.
Yeah, exactly.
But like you don't do that because you just find frenzy charges in other ways.
Yeah. Like mark on hit already. If you're an attack build, mark on hit, and you can get the mastery, and it's super chill.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, that's pretty interesting conversation actually. So I guess my last question on this topic would be for Tyty, because you do all of the like the Awakener runs and all that stuff like that, and the races and stuff like that. So out of the new, like, if you were doing a long run, like to the end of the campaign or the Atlas or whatever, right? Are there any of the kind of skills here, the new ones, which you're like, hey, that actually could be something I could do in SSF on like kind of like a clean competitive run? Is there anything there, or would you just be like, nah, that's all garbage, man?
I'm too stupid, so I wait for other people to figure that kind of stuff out for me. True. It has to be pretty broken, like lightning conduit levels of like damage, for me to be like, that doesn't seem right. That would be a good skill for endgame. But for the last like little while now, I've been pretty upset with like the gearing in endgame, and I've been really upset with Arc Nemesis, so I haven't really done any like endgame Awakener runs in a while.
Yeah, it makes sense.
True. Yeah, fair enough.
I think it's also we have so much coming, right? In regards to like the Vaal skill gems, and they still haven't really shown us what these do. Like, like so far, all we have is just four skill gems. So Frozen Legion, Volcanic Fissure, and then Vaal Flicker Strike and Vaal Cleave. They didn't give us like the numbers or show us what they do. So I think they're really reserving everything to giving us like a lot of spoilers leading up to the launch, which is actually kind of cool because then we got something to talk about every day. But obviously we can't address it here. Right now.
How do you feel about that, Grim?
What's that?
Well, because like personally, I really love getting the patch notes early, and I don't really care about like the new skills or most of the stuff that they release, like in the week leading up to it. All I want are the patch notes, and the fact that they give those out a week earlier or like a week before the actual patch drops feels really good for me, and that generates all the hype. For me, I've never really cared about like the skill gem teasers. I've never really cared about like most of the filter stuff, any of that. But just getting the patch notes, and then for the people who do care about that kind of stuff, that stuff is important for the day 3 before the 2-day mark before the league start, that kind of stuff.
I mean, for me, mostly it's like, okay, what is the league mechanic? Because that's kind of what I'm mostly interested in a new league.
Right.
To the lesser extent, like the loot filter information is pretty useful because you can see like what strategies are going to be able to get free maps from Horizons and also stuff like that. But yeah, mostly like I already know that I want to be excited from the announcement. I think the league looks cool, so yeah, I'm pretty hyped. But you guys were talking about Arc Nemesis before. I know it came out like ages ago now because of the manifestos, but like how much do you reckon that's actually going to affect day 1, day 2, week 1 for some players of the new league. Because honestly, they said, hey guys, let's spray the Arc Nemesis off. But bro, that shit, I was seeing a lot of very familiar faces, which I was not happy to see. Like the big green balls, like why is that still there, man?
I don't care as much about the balls as I care about resistances. I don't want to be playing D2 where I roll up into like a level 6 zone and the dude's fire immune. Like every mob is fire immune. Like I don't know the solution to that. I can't use fire pen. There's no passive point at level 6 that I can realistically allocate that gives me penetration. So I'm just stuck here doing like half as much damage to a mob that I already need to kill because it's magic. I need the XP.
I think a lot of the issues as well that Arch Nemesis introduced is just how juiced the modifiers were and how early they could be encountered. Like for example, if you were to like, I just got into maps like on my character, no matter whether you're in like softcore or hardcore, you see a Chaos Weaver Essence, and you pretty much, if you're smart, you'll skip it. But that's not a nice decision to have to make. And if you're not smart and you don't read it like myself, you just click it and you die because at that point in time, how are you going to be building substantial chaos resistance to survive physical damages, extra chaos from that monster, right? Like it's just like you're at that point in the game where you can't really, where you don't really have the tools yet to protect yourself from these kind of situations. And I think a lot of the frustrations people have with this sort of shit is directly from that kind of stuff because they don't really fully understand the modifiers, and at the same time the modifiers is because they're vague, right? And at the same time, the game doesn't really allow you, it doesn't give you the tools needed to essentially like overcome those challenges yet at that point in the game. And that's also why like all the complaints are always front loaded at the start of the league, and then 1 week later when people start getting like decent builds, nobody cares anymore, right? Like for the most part, people just move on. It's like, yep, But I think that's the big challenge in Path of Exile at the moment, is that the early game progression just feels kind of very scuffed.
Yeah, the speedrunning feels a little scuffed, and then also like when your account is like fully set up, you're fully juiced, the game feels pretty good. Like I'd argue like there's probably more depth to it now than there was before. There's more interesting scenarios. The issue is getting to that point is like literal CBT. So
yeah. I mean, I guess while we're on the topic of Arc Nemesis, I don't know how much you engaged in the goblin hunting, Tai. But they mentioned that they toned down the high end and they introduced new ones. What do we think of goblin hunting again, and the inevitable magic find meta that's going to probably spawn again?
Yeah.
What do you guys reckon?
Go ahead, Tuna.
I personally am not like a massive fan of like everything being loaded into the goblins themselves. I was kind of like, I've always really enjoyed, like for me, like juicing has always been the end game, and I've always really enjoyed that. And basically now, like the only way to really juice was basically just to increase your rare monster count, right? And nothing else was really worth it at all. And your profit was pretty much only coming from, did I get a goblin? Yes. Okay, I paid for 10 maps. Did I not get one? No. Okay, keep going until I do. Right? Essentially, that's kind of like the only thing that justified you investing a certain amount of currency into your maps, which is sort of like, like in terms of like power, fantasy, and progression in an ARPG, you just want to make a stronger character to be able to do harder content and get rewarded for it. So it created a little bit of dissonance with that because you'd really just get to a point where you can just do the maps and then you just put everything else into quantity and rarity, and then you just multiply that by however so much you have on your player quantity. And I think it also created it's like it doesn't really have like it doesn't really quite feel as good as like it used to, where you had to truly actually make a strong character. And in softcore, since you can just like completely not care about dying and stuff, it's I mean, it's sort of it doesn't feel that great, let's just be honest, I think, from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I kind of like that certain mechanics got more valuable, like Abyss. Like, I had never run Abyss before, right? Like, that stuff is garbage. But now you might consider, like, okay, Abyss is all right, because, it's got a bunch of rares. Maybe you get some good stuff. But yeah, I'm not going to do the Magic Find thing again. Like, I might use the Reliquary Scarab, but hell no, I ain't using the Gold Flask again or anything like that. That was no fun, in my opinion.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Pretty much in the same boat here.
It'd be really nice to see like I think the league mechanic has a very good potential for it being what I envision to be like difficulty reward like ratio. Like it's like I want to see that difficulty reward ratio being like a thing where it's like, oh, because I need my character to be stronger so I can do this thing, and it's gonna make me make more currency, right? Which in a way is like how old Delve used to be. The reward ratio now is just non-existent because it's like it's kind of scuffed now in regards to like how the reward scaling works, but the difficulty scaling is perfect in Delve at the moment, and I would just love to see that being applied in more cases around the game, and people being rewarded for that. Even if it doesn't mean like you have to be rewarded as we used to be. It's just it has to be rewarding enough for that to be something, and also like most importantly, it also has to be fun, right? Because it has to be rewarding and fun. So that's something that they also have to keep into consideration.
You guys want to talk about the new league mechanic then? I think it's got a lot of potential, and I know Ty is an enjoyer of roguelikes. Don't you like them, Ty?
Well, so hang on. Let me just quickly wrap up how I feel about loot goblins. Is I'm kind of like I hate gambling in real life, but I actually like seeing like big loot explosions in video games. I think it's cool. The issue is that I'm rolling up into my map, and then I kill them all. But I'm like, guys, look, there's 2 divines on the ground, and my chat is like linking me a picture of somebody like magic find culling for like 30 divines and 20 divines and 15 divines, and I go, ooh, that feels really bad. And
that's still gonna happen.
I hate MF, so I'm not gonna play it, and I'm just gonna go back to like SSF most likely because of it.
Can I kind of explain?
I do think it's alright.
I kind of want to explain that a little bit though, because if you're magic find culling in a normal map, like let's say like a normal all can go map, you're still only dropping like 3 divines on average. The real gains came from the fact that like reliquary scarabs scaled like how many uniques they drop, and the whole conversion was based off of it looks at how many items the monster drops, and then rare items are turned into like T1 currency, T2 currency, and uniques are turned into T1 currency. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get as much pack size as possible in your map to increase the chances of getting more rares, and then you want to have as much quantity as possible so those rares drop more items, and then the real bottleneck was how much rarity you have, because then that rarity turns all those items into uniques, and those uniques are actually turned into T1 drops, aka annulment orbs, exalted orbs, and divine orbs. So basically what the big drops you were seeing was that they were using reliquary scarabs in maps that already had high base quantities, so 8 mod corrupted maps.
I see.
And that's what created those huge loot explosions. But otherwise, it doesn't matter if you had like 300, 400 rarity in an Alkengo map, you're going to drop 3 divines or some shit, right? So that's kind of like, I want to squash the whole scenario of people thinking like, oh, if I should have brought a Kohler, I would have got 30 divines in my Alkengo map. Like that's just not the case.
Yeah, that was what happened on Leaguestarter. When I played BPL though, and there was a situation like that where I dropped like, I think it was like 2 or 3 divines in BPL. I was really happy, and then someone linked me a clip of somebody else in BPL, and they were like, call in the color, and they dropped like 8. And I was like, well,
you can definitely double.
I literally quit BPL like on the spot because I was like, that just reminded me of Leaguestart.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that can't happen anymore, right? Like colors,
that won't happen anymore. Surely, right?
I mean, now you're just gonna identify it. Color
like,
all the time.
it's like lucky.
Yo, I got a rare here. Yo, chat. Any colors?
The thing is now, at least, like the groups will still be able to do whatever they want to do, with this kind of stuff, and they'll still. I also think, by the way, that they nerfed the shit out of this. I don't think they're gonna let the 140 divine explosions still happen. Yeah, I don't think that's the case. So it's gonna be like lower, but there's still, there's still gonna be the potential for groups to do what they do. The problem is though that like, if they nerf that, then what's left? Because there's not really many items dropping, make it worth juicing, and there's
the scarab one. It's pretty nice. Cool. When I like that one, and also the fractured item one is like really nice. I think that's very good.
That is very good. We don't know how rare that is, but I'm hoping it's like about as available as recombinators. The issue is that last league we lost recombinators, and
not the orb.
Not the orb.
I'm talking about the fractured Arc Nemesis thing, which blows up into a bunch of fractured items.
Yeah. Well, I've never found anything good from that, so
Oh, I have. So get wrecked. I got like 5 quad tabs ready for in my dump. So it's gonna have.
Actually, I think I was
shot.
doing some testing in standard, and I found like a fractured +1 or like +2 bow skills, like bow, like
You log
I-86 or
in.
whatever it
Yeah.
is, like in
Log
standard.
in,
I'm
dude.
testing.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
Nah,
That's
that
badass.
unironically, like being able to get like suppression gear or like high attributes and stuff like that, that sells like really well if you can
Yeah.
get it on reasonable basis. So
And also
that's
that
pretty
shit
good.
is amazing, right? Like it just fixes everything
Feels
into
good.
if you're in trade, like it's just so good being able to just have a fractured modifier on each of your items. And I think you know what's funny, Grim? You remember when we talked to Chris and we were like, we like fractured items. We want more.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And now it's
and
everywhere.
they're
It's
actually
awesome.
doing it, dude. It's so
good.
good. And they're adding even an orb
they are
to
good.
fracture items on top of that. So it's
Yeah.
really
The
nice to
orb
see
is-
this, man.
The
I think
orb is
orb's
insane.
cool.
As long as it's not like mirror shard rarity, it's gonna be
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Mirror shard rarities.
How
Uh,
common? How common do you think it should be?
I think it should be like honestly for the health of the game and accessibility, it should be as rare as Exalt shards. But that is like that would be insane.
I would love that too,
obviously.
but I think it's gonna be a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hear me
It's gonna
out.
be rare.
It's as rare as a scroll of wisdom.
Yo.
Every piece of gear. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, it should
Oh
it
my
should be
God.
roughly exalt rarity. I think. I hope that it can just drop like from random mobs as well. But I'm pretty sure it's just harbingers, right? That drop.
Yeah,
from-
it's just harbingers.
The actual icon is the harbinger icon, so I'm pretty sure it's only
It's
harbinger,
Harbinger.
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but like
Eyes are
that.
cringe, but yeah, I get it.
That orb is like insane, man. Like if it's cheap enough, you could use it on like clusters, like on weapons, on gear, everything.
Yeah.
It's like ooh, okay.
Feels
think
good
this
if you can
is,
slam it on some gear.
This is a very nice sort of segue to talk about the fact that memories are being updated and added as we go along, and the harbinger orb coming from harbingers, and the fact that we have a harbinger memory, I think is pretty huge, right? Like the fact that they're actually looking at this as like a modular system. I think it's nice to be like depending on the rarity of this and the fact that like the memory itself can now drop rare well not now but it drops like rare fragments and stuff. That might be like a valuable farming strategy as opposed to like last league, the fact that there's no divine shards, so it's kind of like useless or whatever. So I think that's a pretty cool thing to see, and I like the fact that they're adding new memories and stuff, especially since it was like a big hit last league with the harvest one and the essence one.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
actually
I mean-
didn't. I didn't think I'd like the memory system very much, but it actually was like pretty good for racing, and then it was also like pretty fun for just like generic trade stuff as well. Because by the time you get to the last node, you're like turbo juiced.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't run too many of them because, like, I don't know. They're kind of like binary, right? But I think, I think that like the new ones are kind of interesting. I like what they offer, right? They offer like a new way to play, which is like really important. I think, as you mentioned, the Harbinger one's going to be insane. The Essence one, because Essence is on the map device, is going to be absolutely ridiculous in like the new economy.
Yep.
But I guess we should talk about the 2 new ones as well. What do you guys reckon about the 2 new ones? Obviously, we don't know much about the Shrine one, but they did talk about the Bestiary one.
Beastcrafting one's wicked, honestly. But yeah, go ahead, Tata. You go first, and I'll give my thoughts after.
Dude, I'm gonna be honest. I don't have many runs where I make it that far. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
If I'm doing a
Well,
100 run and it drops, I'm gonna run it. But cool, that's it. It's
Yeah.
good stuff. It's better
I
with
guess-
it. The game is better with it than without it, I'd say.
But I mean, we didn't see all the crafts, right? We saw reroll, awaken gems, synthesize, and watcher's eye, and they said there's like 9 new beasts. So maybe there's something spicy in them, man. Yeah, I think that's gonna be pretty fun to play around with. I don't think it's like gonna change the game or anything like that, but it's definitely gonna be fun to play with.
Well,
Yeah,
I
that
think
Watcher's Eye one looks insane.
depending on
That's
their
pretty
rarity,
cool.
everything is depending on their rarity, right? But it could be very cool to see just people re-rolling like synth implicits. Like for example, you know how like the synth implicit explosion bow was 150 divines this league, right? If this beast is like common enough, and people farm this, it'd be really cool to see like people just spam rolling implicits and then that going down to like 60 or something, right? Even that is like that's like half price. Being able to that immensely increases availability and accessibility of builds in general if they have like some sort of niche implicit or something like that. And on top of that, it adds like a cool new like it's like gambling is fun in this game as long as because you don't have to like remortgage your house for it, right? Like you just play the game and then you gamble and it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. What I did just realize about the Beast one though is like even though they did nerf the multi-boxing, you're still gonna have to go in there with a 6-man party, right? It's gonna be priced around going in there with 6-man because the quantity on like the thing, I was like, okay, well, I mean, if you have some buddies, it could be fun to get in there and see what's gonna happen. But yeah, I guess that's the only downside of that one.
That's true. The unfortunate reality with Beast is like they don't want to make it so like you can't play with your friends, but having to balance around that is probably like basically impossible, right? Because you can't really balance around trade in this regard, because then it would just make the game unfun.
Yep,
just because of some bad apples, obviously, which you're not supposed to be multi-boxing more than 2 or 3 accounts or something. So yeah.
Per PC, you could run 3 PCs.
Yeah, you could run 3 PCs.
True. But yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting to see what the remaining 6 crafts are, and it sounds like the shrine one. I mean, it could be anything, right? Who knows what that's going to be, man.
I like shrines. It could be, shrines are badass.
Yeah.
And they're new shrines too. We don't even know what they do.
Just out of curiosity, do you think if it's like get the shrine and like it's some sort of crazy like loot multiplier, do you think that you're gonna want to go in there with like a gold blunderbore kind of build to do some of the shrines?
Well, because the blunderbore is like shrine effect, right? Oh yeah, I see what you mean.
Boost the shrine effect.
I mean, the unfortunate reality is that like loot doesn't really drop from normal monsters anymore. So like if you're not juicing your map
special
somehow,
monsters, no?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what they truly drop. So it'll all be dependent on how they actually coded it and like what actually happens when you kill those monsters, right? But if it's like if it's like normal shrine monsters, it's like a pack of magic monsters. Like what are you gonna get realistically, Unless you get lucky and you find a goblin there or something.
I mean, think about the Harbinger memory though. It converts everything to Harbinger shards, right? That's could be something similar, but we don't know.
It could be like loot tiles stuff, yeah.
I'll be right back one second.
Yeah, like who knows? Who knows with this sort of stuff? It's all to be seen. They haven't really actually shown us. Like I feel like this teaser or trailer announcement hasn't really like explained. Like it left so much stuff in the dark, as opposed to like what we had in the past, where they sort of like came out and said like a lot more information, right? Like we didn't really even see like how do you access the mechanic, right? Like they basically just
it was more like a trailer than it was like a gameplay demonstration.
Yeah. And them addressing like previous things like that they talked about in the manifesto and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. There's still so many questions in regards to like what is happening and what we're gonna be doing next league.
Do you like that or?
No,
like, I think it's kind of interesting to be like, oh, I don't actually know what's gonna be the best. Like, I don't actually.
Actually, I mean, like in regards to
I gotta figure this stuff out.
Yeah. Like the fact that we were gonna go and like figure it out in the league, sure. But I kind of liked how in the past they gave a lot more hints in the trailers, if that makes sense. Like even if they didn't tell you what the skill gems are, they sort of had a character equipping it, and you would see it on the skill bar, and you would like zoom in and be like, what is that? Like, and that was kind of cool. Like that still added a lot of mystery and suspense and excitement for the league announcement. But I mean, maybe I missed a lot of stuff. Maybe I just haven't observed enough, and they did do that stuff. But
what's this?
The fact that like I think that they left out deliberately a lot from the announcement this time around, as opposed to what they did in the past. So like for example, we don't know how to access the league mechanic. We also have like a lot of skill gems we just don't know anything about. And obviously they said 20 uniques and they only showed us 4. They did talk about some 15, of the other uniques in the patch notes though, actually, like what they changed on them. So
you guys want to talk about the uniques?
Yeah, actually that was the next topic that
Sorry,
I
Tai.
wanted to go on.
Wait, what do you want to say?
That's alright. No, I don't remember what I was gonna say.
Oh, true.
Too dumb.
Okay.
Q&A.
True.
Go ahead. Let's talk about the uniques.
Yeah. Okay. I think the unique. Well, okay. Well, let's ask.
Let's do a quick little pause because there's a Vaal Caustic arrow preview, which I'm gonna link you guys.
Logging in.
I'm gonna link you guys here in the call, and I'm gonna change the screen since I'm like a scuffed podcast person. I'm just gonna change to a different scene, and I'm gonna play the video.
Holy, that looks weird, dude.
Yo.
Oh, what the? Whoa.
They're like slow. Wait, hold on.
It's like you gotta
it leaves like Giga degen for. That's pretty cool, actually. I'm gonna go back to the start.
Valk? Okay, wait. It's got the Fisher as well. You didn't say. I wasn't prepared for this.
Wait, it's got the Fisher too?
Yeah,
I didn't get to that yet.
It's full skills.
Damn, dude, that looks. How many? That's a lot of meatballs, man. That's a lot of meatballs.
There are a lot of balls there.
Oh shit. Wait, it chains! Huh?
Oh,
It
you're
like
right,
moves around.
It does chain to a different monster. It doesn't actually like go straight. I thought it was just like, oh, it just sends it forward.
Yeah, no, it's got like a AI.
Okay.
Okay.
Bro, those balls look pretty tight.
They're,
Tight balls, man.
they're big as
So
well.
I think big tight balls. Like there's like a lot of overlap there, right? On the balls. So I think you might be able to shotgun pretty hard with your balls there.
Damn, that's pretty wicked. That's those look really good, man. I
They
don't know.
do indeed look very good.
The one thing that surprises me about Caustic Air is they made it less of a hit, and it's like more about like just spreading
The
huge juice everywhere. Yeah.
Well, I mean, is that
Isn't that kind of
gonna
the
stack?
identity of the skill?
I guess
that-
so. Yeah.
Will that stack on top of the other Caustic Air degen there? Can you like fire the missile and then like have the fart trail with the cloud on top of that?
Who knows?
Could be
I
pretty
don't know.
powerful.
I'm assuming it's gonna be like I encountered the boss on my dot build and now I like pop off. I don't know, complaining about this a dot skill being mostly based around the dot instead of the on hit is like complaining about Vaal Viper Strike being mostly about the poison aspect of it. Like I think it, they're just hand in hand. Like it's just a dot skill that benefits a lot from having some turbo juice on it.
Yeah,
I think it looks
highly
really cool. Though.
doubt
Both of
it's
these look
gonna
really
stack,
really cool.
but it looks really good. Yeah.
Is there like any way to see like the scaling of that? Like it looks like it. I'd like to see the numbers, but yeah.
Yeah, it's all about the numbers. Because I think what's gonna happen is that like it's not gonna stack, but it's gonna give you like a huge multiplier to like dot multi or just like a more multiplier to the dot on the floor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's possible.
One thing I
We'll have to
didn't see is like because when it hits a monster, it doesn't have that traditional explosion. If you notice that.
It's got PS, 100%. It's got like full
but
PS.
it doesn't go like, which is like the
it doesn't.
shotgunning that you get from poison. So I don't even know if it's good for the poison build. To be honest.
Well, if it gives you a buff, right? Like you said, Dom multi, it could be good.
Yeah.
We'll have to see.
We will have to see.
I think the Fissure one looked better than the Caustic Air. Honestly, that looked like a lot of
The Fissure one
juice.
looks wicked. Yeah, actually.
Yeah, I think it looks good.
Do you guys want to talk about the uniques then?
Yeah.
Or is there
sure.
More juice.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say which unique so far is tickling your fancy the most. You can include the reworked ones as well, the end game ones.
Probably I always found like Void Forge to be really cool, but I don't think I've ever found a use for it, to be honest, without it being like Omega meme. But that actually is like a cool build. I think that, an item drop from the hardest boss in the game is really cool.
For sure.
Is it actually the hardest? I thought it like Uber Elder was kind of like,
Well, I mean, like,
Thematically.
the non super Ubers.
Yeah.
Compare
Oh,
like
true,
Uber
true,
Elder
true.
to like a normal Awakener.
Or even a normal Squidward, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. Or a normal
Fair
Shaper.
enough. I always thought Malvin was the hardest, but yeah, fair enough.
That's true, actually. Maven has like those phases.
Strictly
Yeah.
non-Uber. I don't think Maven's as difficult.
Reasonable. Yeah, I think
Depending
Void
on-
Forge definitely has a lot of potential because they got rid of like the flat damage on it, but then they juiced up the multiplier, right? So like if you can get like ton of flat damage somewhere, it could be pretty spicy.
It's a 6-link, right? So you could use it with like Replica, rather lightless. 6 Abyss Jewel sockets and just juice it that way, and with steel rings. Yeah.
I think there's like also the Mathel technology where you go like alt quality of the chance to bleed or whatever, and like you go low life and it like gives you insane fizz. It's like, ooh.
I didn't know that tech.
Yeah,
well, now you know, man.
Void Forge is
I
definitely
know.
looking like one of the best ones for sure in the announcement. We'll have to see how rare it is, of course, but I also think, notably, I think like to look at the Prognosis Flask. which is designed.
Genesis.
Yeah, Genesis. Yeah, sorry. It's it was designed by Ben, and basically it's like kind of a hardcore flask, but it's an extremely good hardcore flask because it basically so you can see the fact that he's a WoW player. This is basically Stagger from Brewmaster Monk, but only 25%. So, but this also includes dots, by the way, because
I think
25% of
the
life
flask is-
loss from damage.
you'll use that on softcore, man. I think it's that good that you'll use it on softcore.
On bossing, for sure. That item's wicked.
It's pretty good.
It scales with flask effect as well. Don't forget. So you know, if you could get it to like 50%.
Pathfinder bossing. This might be the meta. No, it's not.
I mean, like,
the meta, but
I mean, because it's gonna be rare as shit, right? So I think getting this is not something that you can be like, I'm gonna get this in Gauntlet and pop off, like, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like really
like,
rare.
cool.
It's wicked.
I mean, the Ubers are still like farming them is gonna be, you know, like pretty good money now, right? Because like obviously there's all these new drops and some of them are pretty crazy, right? Like if you can make the Uber farming more comfy with this, like why wouldn't you, right? Like it's you know, pretty cool.
Agreed. What kind of unique are you excited for, Grim?
Well, I mean, I'm most excited actually about the gloves, the Impale gloves, right? Because those are like pretty crazy, man. Yeah, the Gucci Hobo gloves.
What are you gonna use them with?
I think BFBB is probably like the play, right? You like call down all the blades and just like one tap something because of all of the impales. It's like so much more damage.
And if they're alive, you just call Steal the World.
Can you explain something to me? Because I might be too stupid, but isn't there like some dissonance between Impale and Critical Strikes? Because why would you want to crit an Impale? The fact that because
the gloves have 100% chance to Impale if
you crit. Like getting crit is not easy, right?
On BFBB, you can easily like cap crit, no?
Yeah.
Does crit scale Impale too?
I'm actually not sure about that. I've never played
like Fizz Impale builds. I'll be honest. I've always stayed away from that because I've always liked more of like if I'm playing like a hit based build, I like it to be.
It does. Based on hit.
Bigger
Impale. Yeah, like look. Someone told me the numbers on it.
Impale is not based on base damage, basically.
It's like 80% more damage from the gloves apparently, or something along those lines, right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
And if you remember all of the ridiculous like spin on the Cirrus and he dies in like one spin kind of thing, that was all Impale, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe we should get something crazy going on, dude. You know? So,
I remember seeing Cute Dog make that every league. He would just make like a pre-Impale Cyclone character and just one-shot Cirrus with it.
Yeah, dude, like cool. It can be pretty cool. The thing is, like, also, the Impale effect on the tree is generic, right? It doesn't say it has to be attacks, so you could, in theory, like, you know, make some interesting stuff happen there.
And it has 50% increased Impale effect on the unique itself. And that actually gets me pretty excited about the item too. I actually thought like Impale was calculated like Ignites, right? Where there's it's like a base damage type thing. So I was completely ignorant. So yeah, it's
pretty cool.
I'm pretty hyped about that too, actually. That seems really wicked.
The Pride Watcher's Eye also works with spells as well. I actually don't know that, but it would be cool if it did. So yeah, things could get pretty crazy.
You see the line on it. But while I do that, the amulet as well, Eternal Damnation, is, in my opinion, completely insane. For -5% all maximum resistance, you gain additional elemental reduction equal to half of your chaos resistance. So obviously you can get maximum chaos resistance, right? So you can get like 80 chaos resistance pretty easily. So that means that you get 40% elemental damage reduction.
Yeah, but you are losing the max res, don't forget, right?
5%.
Yeah, but you can gain the max res in other ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people are saying to use this with Law Weave, which would make quite the killer combo because it sets your max res at a certain point, right?
I don't even think you necessarily need to go that far. Like, even just having -5 and 40% elemental damage reduction is like pretty good. It's just at the cost of your amulet, but
just the amulet.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the problem, right? It's at the cost of your amulet. That's the biggest drawback. Because the amulet itself is kind of like, aside for that line, it's trash. Like, it's got 45 mana and 9 chaos resistance. Yeah. I don't know how high that rolls. I think it rolls into -2. So yeah.
I mean, the cool thing is that comes from the lead mechanic as well, right? So it's maybe a pretty cool drop from the lead mechanic bosses that you get at the end of your big dungeon.
Yeah.
I think they're definitely hitting a few of the uniques out of the park. Like I actually think Disfavor looks pretty interesting because
Disfavor looks sick.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude. Like,
Especially because it comes from normal Adziri.
Wait, no. I think it got moved to Uber Adziri.
Did it go back to Uber Adziri?
I think it did. Yeah, I think it went back.
No. I was like, yo, you can roll up to normal Adziri, get like GG weapon like super early on. I mean, obviously it's a bit rare, but if they made it back to Uber, it's sad.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, man? But yeah, like, I think it's got the potential like use cases, but I mean, obviously it's a melee weapon.
10.
It's a lot of
weapon range on it.
That is insane.
Yeah, it's so big.
Like, it lets you put damage somewhere else, right? Like, because you don't need to get all the AoE on the tree anymore. So, like,
yeah. Or you do get the AoE on the tree with your +10 weapon range.
You're off screen.
You get the damage from somewhere else because you're not using some turbo axe instead. You're using Adziri's, which is
it's pretty good. Isn't it 900 PDPS or something? No.
Yeah, but you can
how much PDPS did it have, chat?
800 PDPS now is what it's got. So it's like okay, so like a mirror sword is like 1100, right, with the tempering orb. So like okay, it's like got the 30% quality on there as well for support gems.
Yeah,
in it.
That's pretty huge.
That's pretty big.
Like, have you seen
pretty good.
What is it? Divergent melee splash.
No.
Melee splash. So that has supported skills deal -2 less damage to surrounding targets, right? So essentially, it has a less multiplier of 41%, but at 20% quality, that's -40 less damage. So if you get another 30 quality on that, that's 60% more damage to nearby targets.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Does that work that way? Holy
it works that way. So it's literally you deal 60% more damage to surrounding targets.
Jeez.
If you have it socketed in there.
That's crazy, man. There's some pretty crazy stuff you can do with the support gems. Let's just say that. And the fact that you don't have to run the dumb Dialas anymore, you just run the Disfavor Porg.
I mean, Dialas has its uses because it modifies the active skill gem, right? Whereas Disfavor only modifies support skill gems.
Yeah,
but it obviously it's still very Pog.
But like also, like if you've got massive balls, you just double crap that shit, bitch. I did a fortify support on there as well. Can't do that with your mirror tier weapon, can you, bitch?
I think that's where these uniques like might shine, where like maybe not enough people use them for them to be turbo expensive, but they're just expensive enough for people to want to buy them and corrupt them, and that's when it gets really interesting. I think it'd be cool to see that, right? Because they're gonna be rare, but like I don't know. The problem is that you have to run Ubers to get them, so it depends how many people are willing to run Ubers for them.
I mean, people run that shit to get the amulets, right? Like I remember double corrupting omnis, like, and those are like 15 divines each, right? Like people are gonna corrupt the axe, and like if there's a world in which the axe is best in slot after it's double corrupted, people are gonna do it.
Yeah, true.
Since we're on the topic of Ubers, how do you guys feel about them nerfing the investment that you have to put on the tree to farm Ubers?
I don't do bosses, man. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I personally always felt that I felt like there was like sort of a problem with Ubers being accessible by putting a skill on the passive tree. I always felt like it was sort of better to have like a separate key so that the price of it wouldn't be dictated by people that can farm it efficiently, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So in a way, there's like, if you're a normal player, like there's always going to be, and you're on Trade League, there's always going to be this sort of like fear of missing out in the sense of like, oh, I could just sell it to people that make more currency out of this than me running it myself. And I just sort of would have preferred for that to be like an upgraded key. Like for example, you do the normal guy, and the normal guy has a chance to drop you something that upgrades the thing. Like, do you know what I mean? So then there would be more incentive to people to farm the two different types of content. I feel like I would have preferred to see a system like that, but they decided to go with how it is, and that's fine. But to answer your question, I feel like to some degree, it's probably better this way, but it removes depth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's better for the average player that, he just put the kids to bed, his wife is out, and he just popped open a beer. He wants to go kill his Maven or his, Eater, and he doesn't want to, turbo respec half his Atlas. He just wants to roll up and kill some boss, and maybe he doesn't make any currency. I think it's better for that guy, but I personally have always liked when bossing is profitable when you invest into it.
Yeah.
I don't think the idea behind investing your tree into bossing being I don't think it was ever like, oh, you're gonna take all your Atlas stuff, save up 100 boss fights, then you're gonna respec the whole thing, run the boss fights, then respec back. It was intended to be like, oh, you're spec'd to mapping, you're gonna sell that to someone who has the bossing tree. So it's unfortunate that people found, I wouldn't even say it's like a loophole, but they found the play style of wanting to do their own bosses and wanting to do their maps to be very enjoyable.
They should have just gave us like a second bossing tree or like an AB. I would have just loved to be able to like swap between passive skill trees. Like, oh, this is my bossing tree and this is my
like a free
tree.
respec.
Yeah, like I mean, not even a free respec. Just literally be able to be like boom boom, like AB.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this also brings up a topic also, which I'm curious about. You guys think is so it wasn't really a big deal that the Ubers had an extra item, Thread of Hope on Sirius. It's like, oh, okay, big deal. It doesn't really affect the price of the keys that much because no one really sells the Uber Thread of Hope for much more than whatever. That's not the case anymore. Like we were talking about those gloves, we were talking about the flask, and that shit is
those are prestige.
Those are gonna be OP, man. They're gonna be. I would have to guess expensive, right? Like 5-10 divine items.
At the very least.
What do you guys think? Is it gonna kind of create a situation where you can't run your own Maven Writ unless you're doing Uber? Is that finally gonna happen?
I hope not, personally.
Early on, no. Same. Early on, those prices are gonna be expensive. There's gonna be enough RF boys. They're gonna be wanting the boots or just any regular drop from Maven for the most part. But after a few days in softcore trade, it's always been the case where if you're not running the Uber juice or you're not lucky, you're running Uber Zeri but you're not doing the feared, you're going to be losing money. And I think we're going to just be in that same situation if you're in softcore trade. Hardcore trade, it's going to be a bit different. Bosses are typically always profitable over there because people are afraid of their character dying. SSF, you're running the bosses for the loot. You're not running it for profit per hour.
The problem though, is to add on to that, sorry, Grim, is I feel like it's also a problem in hardcore trade, right? In the fact that you have groups, right? And you can run with an Orobot and you're always more efficient in doing so. But currently, how it was in previous leagues, there was no reason to run Uber Eats and Squidward. There was no reason to run them at Uber because the real value was coming from the jewels, and the Uber rewards that you'd get from them wasn't really enticing enough to make you want to run it.
Yeah, so I think it could be okay. So there's a few issues with this. First of all, it's going to create the FOMO, right? It's oh well, I really want to give my Maven a go, even without the passive garbage. It's well, I can't do Uber. Guess I better sell it, man. But on the flip side of things, I think it's putting these items on Uber is a bit of a mistake because it's gonna push that is it Uber boss viable agenda even harder, man. Because if your build isn't Uber viable and it's a bosser, it's well, you can't do anything, man. How are you gonna make your money?
You're not making money. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I felt since Ubers were released. Was this is just gonna end up in a situation where in racing, instead of the 5 or 6 racing builds we have, it's gonna be the 2, and sometimes maybe even the 1. And it's yep, that's pretty much exactly what happened since Ubers have been out. So,
but do you think that's a game issue or a player issue? Because they have to be able to design cool uniques and put them in the hardest shit.
Yeah, I know, man, but you know how it's gonna work out, though, right?
That's how it's gonna go. That's just how it's gonna be.
Yeah.
Is it a player issue? Is it a game issue?
This is actually a nice thought experiment. How do you fix that?
Well, you can't really unless you put the the flask and stuff on the normal version, right? But they're not doing that; they're putting it on the Uber version. It is what it is, man. But yeah, I can see there being a little bit of unhappiness over the price of the Maven's Writs and the inability to make money off the normal version in the new league. Sure.
See, that's the thing. Why didn't they just add a currency that upgrades your Writ into an Uber Writ? That would be dropped from the Writ itself, right? So there's incentive to run the Writ, and there's incentive to also run the Uber Writ, no?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree.
And the
That does make
difference in
sense because
profit.
if you're an average Joe, you want to run your regular Maven, you go run the regular Maven. You know you can't do Uber,
Yeah.
so you just sell the currency. I
You
guess
sell
that
the
makes sense.
currency, right? And then the difference in price between the Uber writ and the normal writ would be that currency, right? So it's like I can extract this much more value out of running Uber, and that's going to be reflected in the price of the upgrade thingy, right? And for simulacrums too, yeah. So I also thought like when they first announced the simulacrums, and remember Grim when we had this discussion before they even launched, I was like, why is it the same thing? Like now people are gonna feel forced to go to 30, and obviously that's not the case because they're dirt cheap because nobody wants to run them currently in softcore trade. but like it was like that's a problem, right? Where now you got the FOMO of like, oh, I can't run wave 30. I'm just not gonna run it at all. I need to sell it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it'll work out the same way with the Ubers, but I doubt it because people are really good at bosses, and it doesn't take that much longer to do the Uber version, right?
The biggest problem I can see with dropping the currency is like, okay, let's say that I'm racing HCSSF, or I would never race like Gauntlet, but let's say that for a hypothetical situation, I'm Exile and Ben are racing, and Exile's killed his 7th Maven and he can't drop his Uber Maven currency, and Ben just killed his second, and now that's kind of messed up in my eyes.
As much as that suck, I feel like getting to the point where in Path of Exile you're designing the game around 2 dudes. It's kind of like I don't know.
What Ubers are,
as
though?
much as I love the boys and I love the race, it's like fuck, dude. Like that's just too many moving parts to take into account. Like
isn't designing like Uber Elder just specifically for like a small subset of players, anyways, though?
Yeah, but not.
Yeah,
it's not designed around like the short-term competitive race.
The 5. Yeah, true.
It's more designed around the
needs to be
concept
balanced
of, like,
around it.
League.
I just think that this is a very annoying situation to find myself in, where I need the Uber currency.
Yeah, that would suck.
Whereas before it's like okay, it was already hard enough getting the currency to spawn Maven. But again, the game should be balanced around.
Or it could be like every time you do it, it drops a shard.
Like, man.
Yes, like I don't know.
If it's like more guaranteed, then yeah.
I hate to be like an armchair dev, honestly. Like I don't know this shit and how it works.
Yeah, no,
and
the
psychology behind it, because for sure there's like a lot of psychological. Like players are always gonna have something to complain about, and there's always gonna be something to complain about as well. Like I'm not saying like players are like just complainers or whatever, but there's always gonna be like on both sides something to complain about, because it's actually like kind of shitty, but also like being stuck between a rock and a hard place in design perspective. So yeah, it's a rabbit hole, man.
Yeah,
that's game dev stuff.
It's a tough one though. I think as long as they ease up on how many uniques they're slapping on the Ubers, it might be okay. But like the majority of the new uniques seem to be from Ubers and T16 dungeon crawl. So it's like, oh man, that's gonna take some pretty hefty characters to get that done, right? But yeah. Oh well. I think because we were talking about build diversity, let's talk about the nerfs then, because there is a lot, right? We need to we need to have a discussion about that. I guess elephant in the room, our boy over here lost his main skill, Lightning Strike. What do you want to talk about it?
The Lightning Strike, I mean, it just I wouldn't recommend it to people anymore. The 2 additional prods, like only having 2 additional prods is like you could fix that in endgame by potentially just going for the helmet enchant, and then I don't know, with some other stuff like here or there or whatever. But then on top of that, now Elusive not resetting with Withering Step, that's kind of just a nail on the coffin. So I wouldn't really recommend that to people anymore. I know I'm retiring my guide from Max Roll because of that, for sure. I wouldn't want people to play that anymore, at least until we figured it out. Like, I'm okay with that. I think it's like, oh, okay, sure. Like, the way they want to go with skills is that they have their lifespan, and then after some time, it's like, all right, it's time to, move on to something else, because maybe they don't want people to get bored of playing the same thing over and over again. It's like, all right, that's cool. What the fuck do we move to? What's next? Like, they didn't buff Molten Strike, right?
This has been a problem for a long time now, where it's like, all right, we nerfed Helix. Don't worry, speedrunners. And it's like, all right, nice. We're not using Helix, but we're back to using the old garbage that we had. Like, there's new skills But there's nothing new, you know what I'm saying?
like I feel like there has to be something that's sort of like enticing enough for you to still
Oh, I'm
be excited to
try
play that same archetype though. That's the important part. Is that like if I want to play Lightning Strike, I want to play a character that like basically he's using his fist to like hit something, you know? And it's like it's a satisfying way to play the game. That striking, life gain on hit, and crit. You know, it's really fun, like scaling that, and it's really satisfying, like progressing through the game and constantly getting gear for it and stuff like that. And for that to just be like, oh well, and it's kind of shit now, and there's nothing to replace it. That's just depressing, right?
I mean,
think
Venom
it's just the
guy
Vaal
is like
skills are.
small.
Yeah, Venom Gyre is kind of similar, and there's like there's some new Vaal stuff that'll probably like end up just replacing it. So
Sure.
we can't counter chickens right now because there's
But-
nothing that immediately jumps out. But I do think that it has been a long-standing balance problem where it's like we fixed the problem by nerfing the most OP skills.
But the problem with that is
Cool.
that not
Where's
only
the
did they
other
nerf Lightning Strike, they nerfed the Nightblade like a shit ton.
Oh, true.
Because
Yeah.
now like the Elusive
Is it
just
DOA?
got ticked down all the way to 0, right?
Is it dead or is it like
Well,
just
it's
severely
like
worse?
it's like you don't want to play a game where you're on a roller coaster, right? Where it's like, oh, my Elusive is maxed, and now I have 0 multi.
Yeah.
I didn't actually realize that, but yeah, like when it's like at like 20%, you're basically missing a support gem, right?
Yes, you're missing a lot of multi.
Right. Yeah,
lot
that
of
is
juice.
that is gonna feel. It's like Pendulum of Destruction or whatever from the Elemental. It's just like,
Yeah.
well, I don't have damage right now.
And Nightblade was
Ooh.
the only reason why you'd want to play an inferior base, which was daggers and claws, because claws themselves never had like the highest base damage, but they had life gain on hit and a lot of quality of life. So that's why you'd be attracted towards claws, but they never had the base damage to justify using them. So I mean, you just play you would just play swords, right? We just go back to swords. But then again, people look at swords and it's like there's not enough quality of life to really want to play that, right?
Actually, now that you mention that, could you not use like Beltimber Blade or something like that on the Lightning Strike for the projectile?
I mean, it's no damage though, dude.
Sure, my bad,
You need
dude.
damage.
Yeah. I guess the other thing to talk about is the Jewel Armageddon. They just removed like all the jewels,
yeah,
dude.
yeah, that too.
That is
That's
pretty
tough.
brutal. I think it's probably my least favorite change of
Really?
the patch. Yeah, I mean like Replica Hot-Headed is gone. Replica Conqueror's Efficiency. That's like basically removing cock for the most part. Custom Crate is like, I give you the mana, man.
Yeah.
No cock.
No cock, dude. Like there's a bunch of them, man, which are just like gone. Like the steel one with the Lord of Steel or something like that. That's gone.
Mantra of Flame
It's like,
as well. That Mantra of Flame is so
Mantra of
big.
Flame.
I don't know why
don't know.
they decided
I
to.
looked at the jewel change and I thought it was interesting. I thought it was like kind of neat. If if they're substantial enough to like make a big impact on builds, they reduce a lot of the like current build stuff and they like introduce some new gems and jewels or whatever, and then they're like
Yeah.
good for new stuff.
But like there's like what was the one? It's like the ward loop
Ignite
one, right?
duration or
No, the one
It
which
does.
reduces the effect of your flasks.
oh
Oh
yeah.
shit.
Yeah, that shit's gone. So you can't get the ward loop working
I can't
anymore
think of the
properly.
name.
Oh, I
Channel
didn't think
Survival
about that.
Instinct. Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
And that's also like
pretty rough, man.
Soul Tether was using Solters, sorry, was using that to get its
Yeah,
flash duration
and-
as well. So that's pretty sad there. I think like losing 20% movement speed, attack speed, and cast speed for self ignite, self chill was like, but why? It's also like kind of sucks. Like the thing is,
Yeah.
like, not to diminish the fact that like I love the fact that they're making crazy, cool ass new jewels, right? That's wicked. Like I'm looking at this Witchbane jewel, Cobalt jewel right now, and it says when you kill an enemy affected by a non-aura hex, you become immune to curses for remaining hex duration. So for example, if you kill an enemy with a hex and it's a 10-second duration, you're immune to hexes for 10 seconds. So it's basically you're immune to hexes while mapping if you have this jewel.
Yeah, I mean
that's pretty wicked,
cool.
right? Like I think that these jewels can be really cool, but at the expense of losing some other really cool shit. And I don't know, man. It feels maybe they just want to get rid of bloat. I don't know.
Probably. I don't know.
I think honestly, it's what
for it.
Taitai said. I think they're just out with the old, and they bring
In
some new
with
stuff.
in with
right?
some of the new. Because there were a lot of builds that did rely on their gems. You're right, and a lot of those builds are kind of like they're either very difficult to play around now, or like they're just straight up dead because the jewel's gone. But I think that there'll be other solutions to the build problems that people will find. So maybe not every build will be completely dead. And then on top of that, there's enough like cool new jewels now that there's gonna be some interesting stuff anyways.
For sure, yeah. That's true.
Especially if they are as broken as like some of the stuff they teased, and like they're generally around that same power level. I would like to be very excited to find a jewel, whereas currently I find a cobalt jewel, I put it in my stash, and then I just like ID like 300 of them, and maybe one of them's good.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Hmm.
But actually,
right.
like,
we haven't talked.
Yeah, go on, Grim. Actually,
Okay. No. Go. I was about to move on. You go.
Okay. So since we're still on the conversation of like uniques, right? I would like to like steer the conversation to ask you guys more about like what do you actually think? Because it feels to me like GG is really pushing towards in the future or right now they're trying to get to the point where uniques are truly unique and they're very rare to drop. Whereas in the past we've always had uniques sort of fill the gap between I just hit maps and I need something to boost me to get to endgame until I can afford to replace it with a good crafted rare, right? But now there's sort of what I feel like, and this is my bias coming in here, and obviously your opinion should be whatever your opinion is, but like my bias towards this is that like it feels like we're just missing that early progression that that was given to us by uniques, with the fact that they were just common, right? And you could just buy it like, oh, it's like a cheap unique, but now all these good uniques are like rare as shit, and it's so much harder to find them. Like if you've played like an SSF run, you've probably felt this as well, Tyte, that way you just don't find a useful unique for the
100%.
longest time unless you go specifically to like heist or like doing like Legion for your unique box or something like that, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
So I pretty much agree that like it does feel a lot harder to find like something like very good now, but I do like them being more exciting to find. So it's just a trade-off. It's a trade-off that I'm kind of willing to make, to be honest, where divines are super expensive and they're super rare, and like you don't really get to use them on your gear, so then the expensive like uniques are like way more expensive, or like the well-rolled uniques are way more expensive. I think it's just literally a trade-off of like they're less common but they're stronger, which I'm kind of all for, because there are a lot of uniques in the game that are just kind of meme.
Yeah.
I think for me, I mean, like I kind of don't agree with you guys, because last league their whole thing was like, let's add a bunch of leveling uniques, and they did that, right? Like singularity and stuff like that, and like the energy shield chest, even though no one uses them, I know, but like maybe they will this league, who knows. But I think uniques either fall into like one or two categories. They're either chase uniques, which are like Mage Blood and the new Void Forge or whatever, and the uber uniques, or they're leveling uniques and Leaguestarter enabling uniques, right? Like things that people are like, yep, I'm gonna have that on my Leaguestarter, and it's gonna make my Leaguestarter OP, right? Like stuff like that, like coded shrapnel and stuff like that, like which enabled poison builds. I don't really think there's any in between space, so I think that they should just move like them either to one or the other side, and get rid of that like 2C unique area where it's like, okay, if it's got a good roll, it's kind of okay. I think it should just be either like Giga Rare and Giga OP, or like pretty common and help you with a Leaguestarter. That would be my approach.
But see, the problem with that is that like the uniques are now, for example, like what we used to just equip on Leaguestar was the Gull, and that would cost like 10 Chaos, and now costs like 5 Divines on Leaguestar.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so they made the decision to make that like a chase one, right? So that kind of sucks. I mean, we'd probably like that to be one of the League Start enabler ones, right? Maybe they just made the wrong call there.
Yeah, or like Thunder Fists or something like that. So that's where I feel like these uniques, once you can afford them, it's almost past its usefulness, because you could just get a better rare for that price or at that point, unless it's a very specific niche situation, right?
Grim, are you saying that like you wish that uniques were either like super rare and super good, or they were super common and they were just like pretty good?
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. Like the build I'm like starting, I'm using 3 uniques, right? And I think they're all pretty good. Like like they can be beaten, yeah, for sure. And they are Prism Weave, the elemental damage belt, which is it's pretty good damage and some resist.
What else?
Take notes. I'm using the Poised Prism, which is like the Dex Strength Intelligence stacker with like 75 all res quiver, which is like it fixes res, it's pretty good damage. and I'm using the Hari's Truth precision amulet because like got culling strike and crit multi and stuff like that. So like I feel like they solve problems in my build, and they're like I know I'm gonna be able to get them on day one. It's like super easy to get them, and it's pretty good. It makes my Leaguestarter better. And then there's stuff like Omniscience, which I'm gonna be building around later on, but it's like insanely rare, so I'll build up to that.
Yeah.
I have to like disagree with you on the unique things. I think the system is like way better when there's a mixture of things that are like kind of aids, but there's also like that reasonable chance that it's going to be pretty good. Like I see a heavy belt, a unique heavy belt on the ground, and I know it's not going to be a mage blood, and I know better. But there's that tiny little voice, that little worm in my ear that's just like, what if, dude? What
Still
if?
makes you
and then
check.
I'm like, yo, I gotta check that. Or like,
No, I
I'm
agree with
thinking
you.
unique leather belts because I'm like, what if there's some juice, dude?
I agree with you, man. Like, I think that items like that should exist as well. I mean, I just think they should be rare, which they are, right?
Yeah.
Like, if they're gonna be like giga busted, right? But like, I'm talking about like items like cost freeze, man. It's like in this middle area where it ends up being like 20C. It's like just make this overpowered and make it rare, and then it can be a build, right? Like, why is it languishing in this like useless tier?
I think Cosprey is like one of those examples of it is a great unique. It's just that they nerfed Cox so much.
Yeah, they nerfed
that it's just like
so much.
There's too many dropping in comparison to how many people want to play Cock because Cock sucks.
Just make it better then, man. Make Cosprey insane.
But that's back. I mean, what would they have to do to Cospreys? It's like there's a line on Cospreys that says Cock doesn't suck. Like
reduce mana cost of spells. Done. Fixed.
Easy.
Boom.
I don't know.
8,000% damage multiplier to all cast on.
The chat wants me to look at this, so I'm gonna pull it up. They keep linking me a relic. So the relics that are we're gonna get to those later, chat. But since you're linking it, the relics are the things that you're gonna have from the League mechanic. You're gonna find them. They're untradeable, and you're gonna slot them into your character, and they buff your character even in and outside of the League mechanic. And there's a new one that they just added, which I will link in the Discord. And it's gain 8 physical damage as extra fire damage, and melee hits have 15% chance to fortify. So essentially, it's like it's like a way to get fortify, I guess, for like all melee skills, as well as like physical as extra fire, which is pretty good. But I think what they're trying to show us is that like there's build modifying / crutch type of modifiers on these that might actually be like very complementary to enabling different builds and allowing us to build different types of characters.
Yeah, I mean, like that's not that insane, right? Like the ones they showed before are better, but I understand what they're going for.
The Keystone stuff is insane. Let's be honest.
That's not.
Do you guys want to talk about the new league then?
Let's talk about the new league because I skipped over that to talk about something, and Grim asked me like an hour ago, so I'm down to talk about it.
Singular garlic run, go type. What do you think about the new league?
So it's pretty bad for like speedrunning because it's pretty rare that I'm gonna like go into like a heist in the middle of Act 6 when I'm in like an Act 10 run. But I think overall for the generic gamer, I think it's pretty good. The relics have me feeling a bit weird because if the mechanic is not as much fun to play, like you'd be kind of stupid to skip heist in Heist League because of how much XP you get from like resetting the tunnels or whatever and like running back and forth, and you also got insane loot from heist. But you could still skip heist and like not be at a huge disadvantage. Or if you skip this league, you're not going to get these like soul bound or account bound like relics, So I think it's a bit weird. But it's a bit dependent on the league being really fun.
Like, did you see the XP bar? It was like a lot of XP, man. Maybe that was level 99. Like, you never know. Like, that could be that much XP, dude.
You think somebody testing for those trailers is level 99? You really think
sure. Yeah. I mean, okay, so look, just because we're talking about the relics, the Sanctified relics, for anyone who doesn't know, look to be pretty build defining. The best one we've seen had a keystone on it, 30 multi, and I think like something else, like which was really good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see ones which are really good with +1 proj, +1 chain, onslaught, or something along those lines, like at the really high end. We also know that they're modifiable on your runs in the Sanctum. You can like manipulate the modifiers potentially, and I would hazard a guess to say that you can corrupt them, which will add a random keystone, right? So you do have some determinism over what you're getting, and you can probably work towards something eventually. Now, The catch is they're obviously soulbound, right? They're account bound, so you can't buy them.
Yep.
Now, this is probably their response to Lake of Kalandra, because we all said the rewards suck. There's nothing in there. I'm not doing it. Lol, and we all skipped it. So, if you want to complete your character, you have to do this mechanic. There's no world in which this will not be ran by everybody at some point, unless you want to like lose power, right? So, we're basically all going to be farming it, whether we like it or not, even if the rewards are garbage. So it's an insurance policy.
I love this.
I think it's fine. Yeah, you like it?
Yeah, because I feel like you like as much as like a content can be good, right? Or whatever. Like sure, it has to be fun first and foremost, but there also has to be incentive for you to do it, right? So, but at the same time, it's also like tricky because if you force people to do it, it'll become like choregast or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, so there has to be a reason.
Imagine it's not fun and everybody has to do it.
Yeah.
They have to do every single one that they come across, even if you hate it, because you need the relics.
That's the thing. It's like, it's so tricky. Like, I feel like, again, this goes back to game design where it's like, we want people to do it, so we have to put good rewards inside of that. But at the same time, if we make it mandatory, then it'll become like just a chore. But I feel like to some regard, in Path of Exile, it's much less so of an issue as my previous example, which was World of Warcraft, because the league is 3 months long, right? And sure, like you could say whatever you want about like having to do something for like a month or 2 months or however much people want to play the league for, as opposed to 2 years, which is a World of Warcraft expansion, right? Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, on that topic though, it looks like they're pitching the power of these pretty damn high, man. Right? Like getting a free keystone, like Jesus. And you know, if Mathel happens to get the Mage Bane one and builds all his builds around the Mage Bane one, it's like, how are you gonna get the Mage Bane one if it's like you can't even buy it? So you're just gonna have to grind that shit to play the build. So it's
gonna be one of the tricky things as being a build creator this league. It's like, first thing you gotta tell people, it's like, I'm using this relic, go farm for it.
True.
But I also think that's kind of cool. Like in a way, that's
I think it's cool.
It's like being an Iron Man in like RuneScape or something, where it's like you need a specific item to do a specific thing, therefore you have to go do it, and that also sort of incentivizes you to play the game and to do the grind. And I don't know, there's it's like, I don't know. I think that's good.
If it's fun, it'll be an amazing system.
Yeah.
And if the league mechanic is ass, it's going to be mega swamp ass. That's my point here. It's like,
well,
it's going to be the highest of highs or the lowest of lows.
Do you actually think it looks fun? My personal opinion is it's either going to be swamp ass lab or it's going to be so much fun, man.
Yeah.
It's one of the two extremes.
I think, for example, like Lake of Kalandra was so much more obvious that it wasn't going to be fun. Like when you first see it and the rocks are coming up and it looks like mineral pools, you're thinking to yourself like, oh shit, I'm not going to be able to shields. I'm not going to be able to fucking shield charge, whirling blades, like properly. And then I'm going to have to wait for those rocks to come up. Like, but I think this mechanic, it shows like, you know, that there's like a variety of rooms, so it's not specifically only gonna be like kill. There's also gonna be like little puzzles. In puzzles, I think it's more like running puzzles. So it's like, you know, like the Searing Exarch rocks, for an example, or like a spinning laser or some shit. It's like active gameplay, as well as other rooms, which are like bossing rooms. The one thing that they didn't show, and I'm sort of a little bit concerned about, is like, I really hope that the mechanic is not only single target focused.
Nope. It's gonna be single target only.
If it's only kill bosses, single target focused, then it's gonna be a little bit depressing. I don't know.
I think it's pretty much gonna be only bosses. They would have to go the approach of like delve nodes to get any other kind of gameplay, which I don't think they're gonna go with that. I think it's gonna be bossing only again.
Well, yeah. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see whether you can actually do those bosses on builds that don't have insane DPS. Because I feel like in the lake, it was like that, where it was like very single target focused, but the monsters would also like pass like difficulty 5, 6. It would be ridiculous, right? Like, you're on a Leaguestarter, past difficulty 5, 6, those guys just one-shot you and you can't kill them, right? Like, they're tanky as shit. And that sort of, also on the top of the fact that it was basically copy-paste mobs from like, you know, like Rogue Exiles or whatever, and they didn't have telegraphed abilities. But in this mechanic, it looks like they have telegraphed abilities. So I think the gameplay will be much more like fun or like accessible or to builds that don't necessarily have infinite damage because you can actually dodge things manually.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I mean, at the end of the day, every league mechanic is going to be a DPS check, right? If you do your incursion faster, you're going to get through the map faster. If you do like, your delve faster, you're going to get to a deeper node. Like at the end of the day, everything's going to be a DPS check, and I don't think this will be any exception. Where like, if you're a single target focused build, the boss that you're fighting is going to die faster, meaning that you don't have to dodge as much stuff, which means that your build's going to be better for the league mechanic. So
Yeah,
I think the inherent argument of like, oh no, I need a lot of DPS is like, it sucks, but don't be bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a question of how much though, right? Because like, if I was playing Blade Vortex, like that's going to be kind of cringe, right? Like having if I don't kill it in my Vaal Blade Vortex window, it's like,
Yep. Fair.
Yeah.
But also to consider one thing is that like if you are playing melee or Blade Vortex, like the closer you are to the target, the less of the juice you're gonna lose. So in a way, it's like, yeah.
I think that's a really good change, by the way. That was instantly what I thought of whenever I saw the league mechanic was like, buy Karn, buy Melee, buy everybody that has a standstill, buy Juggernauts, buy RF. But no.
But it looks kind of good in regard of like the bosses, they all have telegraphed abilities and they don't look like they're spamming auto attacks at like high speeds.
Yep.
And on top of that, it's not going to be modified by map modifiers per se. It's not like you all of a sudden have like, unless like there's sort of like things that you can juice or whatever that gives them like turbo or some shit. But then that's kind of your fault. And that's like,
that's
definitely
the alter incident.
Yeah.
That's definitely in there. Like I don't know. Like, do you play a lot of roguelikes? I know my boy. Knows. Like if they've actually tried to go with the roguelike formula, like you'll get shit runs, right? Like where you're just gonna get absolutely eaten alive. But then there's gonna be the god run. Man.
I think that's cool, though, right? That's the appeal of it. Is the replayability.
Once you get like a full set of like teacups and crockery of the modifiers, I read some of them, and some of them are like reduce the cost of the shop by 15%.
Yeah, they're boring.
And you can fit like 8. So it's like everything in the shop is free.
Yeah, like, but the thing is like the things that they showed in the shop were literally just like they're like reduce the amount of damage that you take to that bar or something like that. It's not like it's not like you're getting like 2 extra proj as you would in like another like in other roguelikes, right? Which is what I was hoping to see is like, oh, there's like a buff that gives you like extra projectiles, or that gives you onslaught, or that gives you like some
a lot of people in my chat were saying that same thing where they were like, I was really hoping for like a true roguelike where like you get the god run and then like I'm running through acceleration shrine plus invincibility shrine, whatever divine shrine, and then like I'm just juicing, and that's like the 1 in the million run, and instead it's like, oh, I got a little bit of HP or whatever the toughness back. Because
that's what makes roguelikes feel fun, no? Like when you have that run in like, I don't know, if you're playing like Vampire Survivor or Potato 20 minutes till dawn, like where it's like, oh shit, I like I got this buff that literally enables me to get these other buffs, and now my build went from being just complete shit to being insane under these circumstances. Like, and I don't know, that's something that's really cool that they're really like modifying the way your character plays. But I mean, that's probably not within the scope of what they wanted to go with this league, maybe. Or maybe they did add some of these things and we just haven't seen it yet.
I think it's possible that there is stuff like that in there, because like I'm just looking at some pictures right now, and there's definitely some pretty hefty downsides, right? But yeah, most of the stuff which I'm looking at seems to be saying like resolve, right? Which is like your fail-safe stuff here. But yeah.
Yeah, essentially just looks like it's like, oh, you take less resolve, or you regen your resolve once you get to 20%. When it's like, that's kind of boring, right? Let's be honest. It's just like, oh, it's ways to keep your run going, but it's not exactly ways to keep your run fun. Like, or make it
I guess fun. We'll just have to see, right?
Yeah.
We have to see. Because like right now, it's like they haven't really shown a lot of the boons, I think they call it. It's like they haven't really shown us really any of that, like of what's going on there, right? And you have to remember, like, Sentinel League and in Heist, there was actually modifiers that you could have inside the zone which did give you power. So I would be surprised if there wasn't stuff which like it's like you have Wrath aura now for the entire rest of the run. You know, like stuff like that. I would say that's probably gonna be there, but we'll see.
Take it easy with the S word.
What the hell? Sentinel.
I don't want.
Oh no. Yeah. Okay, so what do you guys think about the rewards though? So it looks like the rewards are in delineations of 3 times multipliers. So you can either take 2 currency, 6, or 18. And you get the 2 right now, the 6 at the end of the floor, and the 18 at the end of the full set of 4 floors. Do you like that risk reward management? Because that's like ultimatum on crack, right? 32 maps you have to survive. Bruh.
Yeah, I mean that's good. That gives people the incentive to build characters for it, right? I think that's always always a positive.
If it's as hard as Lakes, though, right? I died in the lake. Like, it's like,
I definitely feel like it's one of those things that like I'm gonna test the waters on my Leaguestarter, and if the mechanic is like giga fun and giga rewarding, you know, like then it's like, all right, time to make a character literally for this. And just have fun and play this, right? But like, then there's sort of a dissonance with wanting to run maps as fast as possible to get this thing, because you need to run a lot of maps to get a full floor, right? And then having the character that runs them. So it definitely feels like a 2-character league.
It's gonna be like Soulfight Rotas again. Oh boy.
No, don't say that, bro. Rotas, nah.
That's how it's gonna be, man. You already know it.
Grimro's triggering everybody today.
Oh no.
He's on a rampage.
Literally got flashbacks, dude. On my ZDPS Deadeye. Load in, there's
reality,
a jug, fucking
Nemesis undead.
20.
In reality, it probably will be that though. You do realize that, because like, okay, in a world where the mechanic is the most rewarding, right? It's like pretty damn rewarding, like more rewarding or fun than traditional mapping. Then you will just open the T16 map, because that's got the chase uniques, and just run straight to the pillar, portal out, portal in, portal out, portal in, until you get your 8, and then you go off and you go and have fun, right? How do we end up here again?
Well, I would love there to be like sort of like, oh, I'm just running my Alk and Go maps, you know, and then I've stacked this up fast. Like you're more incentivized to run like fast maps, sure. But that's kind of like even more nail in the coffin for Juice, honestly. I like the last 3 leagues, it just felt like they just killed Juice. It's one of the sad parts about this, but it also, if the gameplay loop is fun, that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. If the league mechanic's fun, it'll be worth it. Same as like the relics. Also, I really like how the relics are account bound. They're not character bound. They're account bound.
Yeah, that's really nice. Hell yeah, brother. Yeah, okay. Well, I guess just on the topic of rewards, 40% of the rooms are reward rooms. But that doesn't account for the fact that you get to scout the rooms. So you can like, if 40% of the map is rewards, and you can see like a lot of the map, and I'm pretty sure there was a downside which hides all the rooms, so I have to imagine there's an upside which shows all the rooms, right? Like, I mean, come on. So like, if you can get like a run where you just like get all the reward rooms, like 32 times 18C. I know that's like massive copium, but like imagine that.
That's so copium.
That's not... Imagine that. Oh boy, that's like 600 chaos.
Yeah, but you gotta run through all those.
Yeah, true. I mean, it still has a lot of money though, right? Pretty nuts.
Regardless, it'll be a lot of money.
A lot of months, but yeah, I think it's a lot of potential there. And then I guess like, unless you guys wanted to keep talking about the mechanic, the last thing to talk about is the Atlas passive tree,
which I hope we get to see soon. More of it, at least, because it looks like they've added 1 cluster to every mechanic.
One singular.
Yeah, except Metamorph. They added 2 to Metamorph. Because everybody loves Metamorph.
Legion has 2.
The Legion had 2, okay.
Legion has 2, yeah. From what I understand of listening to Chris's voice in the thing, and also the interview, the nodes should, in theory, only increase your chance to encounter the mechanics in maps, right? So you can increase your chance at harvest by X%. If you take all the nodes, maybe you get like 40% increased chance at harvest. I think it's actually got quite a lot of impact on everybody who plays the game, and like I imagine it's probably pretty impactful for people like you, Tyty, as well, who race.
Yeah. No, that kind of stuff is pretty impactful, especially when there's like a good mechanic for XP. If if it's gonna be juice, like, oh, there's a node that like, not only gives me more harbingers, but gives like more rare monsters with harbingers. Like that's gonna be something to look forward to for XP races and stuff. We don't really run those anymore though, so it's not as important. But a lot of that stuff is kind of cool for like Awakener runs if those ever come back, or like the end game Exarch Eater runs.
Bring it back, dude.
Bring it back.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's kind of like weird though, because like you could in theory get more juice potentially. Like you could have like 10 abysses in your map, but then you kind of want to be running your dungeons as well. Head to the Sanctum, so it's going to be a bit weird to see what ends up being the best.
Well, do you guys like the change away from like I juice the map, I run the map, I repeat this 1,000 times, whereas like now it's more like I really like Breach. Breach is in every single map that I run. It's turbo juiced. I've also got the League mechanic on top of that, and occasionally I'll run some Delve as well. Because I think the end game is probably in one of the best states it's ever been in, for the most part.
Yeah.
Definitely with the Alice mapping, and Alice passives. It just sucks that juicing per se. I don't know, like it felt like what Chris was said. The whole like I felt like a lot of the stuff was like, this is kind of controversial, so like people were complaining about loot and stuff, like the average player, like all can go and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you guys also felt that, like maybe in T14 plus maps, once you got altars, it just felt normal, right? It wasn't like insanely bad or anything like that. It's not like in the past you would drop like valuable uniques or anything crazy. It was mostly just like, like groups like MP or people that wanted to solo juice as well, that like you'd put that investment into your map and you just wouldn't really run shit. So you wouldn't drop shit. So it kind of like ended up being like a nerf end game, right? So that they can normalize how much people are making, right? Like or like, but the thing is that gameplay is fun, and that also gave you incentive to invest in your character outside of just movement speed. Because like now the incentive is to run as many bosses as possible, as many maps as possible, and as many altars as possible, right? Like I saw Grim last league running haste, Vaal haste, mage blood with Quicksilver, and now you're even gonna be able to put your onslaught flask on mage blood.
Hell yeah!
Let's go, dude!
Legions per hour, baby. Let's go. Gotta go fast. I mean, that's always how I'd like to play though. And despite what everyone says, that's how the game used to be, and then it changed to be Mega Juice.
Mega Juice,
like in the Q-Dog self-champions, era.
That's also kind of like because the Mega Juice didn't exist in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean, Scarabs never used to be a thing, right? And then
exactly.
I gotta say, the thing I'm most excited about though is like right now, it's like you totally can do some mechanics in white and yellow maps, but it's like, okay, like who's gonna go and put Scarabs on their white and yellow maps? Like, but if you can get like 100% chance at like Delirium Mirror on white maps, let's go farm some white maps, man. It doesn't really matter if reds are too hard. Just tell everyone to go spec full Delirium, get some orbs, and get some upgrades, right? Like that could be potentially something you could tell everyone to do or do yourself.
I mean, I've always told people that like, if you're not like, pushing for world first or anything, it's perfectly viable to stay and loot your maps until your build comes like turbo online, and you just stay there for a few extra hours.
Contrary
it's totally viable and stuff.
Contrary to what people believe, it's also completely fine to not fucking play Seismic Trap. Dude, everyone's like, I gotta fucking play it. It's the best. It's just everything else sucks. It's like, bro, fuck, relax. Like, what the hell?
If you're in my shoes in a bossing race, you have to. I'm forced to.
Yeah.
If you want to have the best leagues, I mean, I guess since we're on the topic, we can talk about league starters. But I do think that Seismic is going to be like kind of the best. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I mean, for for sure.
Better.
Yeah. But it's like hyper niche scenarios. But it's also like, I feel like people, they feel like that.
Oh yeah, they feel obligated
to
do something that
they don't have to do. It doesn't fucking apply to us. Like, we're in softcore trade, like 99% of us, bro. Like, you could play double strike if you really wanted. Like, yeah, sure, it would take you like 2 days to progress instead of like fucking 7 hours. Like, if you're a good player, that is, right?
I mean, like, okay, so oh man, I mean, there's just so much pressure on people these days that like to want to like play like the best, right? Like back in my day, running like T11 strands was the end game, man. It's like, okay, the bar's pretty low, dude. It doesn't take much to run a T11 strand, right? You play anything. but now it's like pretty high, right? Like you need like a good build. So I think that's why everyone's like kind of like freaking out. It's like, I gotta play the best build. When in reality, like you really don't need to play the best build to like, you know, like do well in a league or like achieve your goals, right?
Definitely. And you also don't need to be like fast to maps to do well.
Yeah, agreed.
Like,
you could be half an hour slower, and still make more currency than I do in softcore trade.
You could even be
just
like
like
a day
playing
slower. Like if
you could be a
you know,
day.
like it's like not necessarily about how fast you are. It's just how knowledgeable you are. If you're talking about trade, right? Like I'm talking about like if you're a trade player and you see something and you're like, oh, there's a market there, like or like even just like if you decide to stay in T1 maps and farm essences, you can make a shit ton of currency, right? Like there's so many different ways to play now, and Atlas Passives really enable that too. So
agreed.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what you're doing.
Yep. Wait, what was that?
It's just a knowledge game.
You know what you're doing.
Oh,
it's
yeah. I was gonna say, like, most of the time on day one, like, unless you're like a sniper or like a crafter or something like along those lines, like, you can't sell anything anyway. No one has any money to buy any of your shit. So it's like
that's not true. That's not true. That's not true.
Okay.
Most of my currency early on is because I'm the first to find a unique, and little Timmy, you know, he just shows up with 2 exalts somehow, and he's like,
"Oh yeah, the dual-wielding black cards."
Found these
dual-wielding
plastic cards.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, yeah, if you're like first to Uber Elder and you've got some credit card wielders, you can make some money. But I mean, like, really, dude, come on, dude.
I mean, there's also been a number of cases where I've gotten to a boss, sold an item really quickly, and then like, you know, someone from MP's group messaged me to buy it.
Yeah. Like the big groups setting up, because for them it's like investment, and they have someone flipping for them. So,
but my situation's like super niche with like, you know, first to market kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like, how many people are actually gonna be like day one Uber Elder? It's like, come on, man, just like chill out, right? You don't need to worry about that.
How I've always felt for me is like day one is because the way Tata would do it is he would just progress to T16s and have like almost no maps completed by that point.
Yeah.
Whereas like I use day one to set up for my farm, which is like complete my shit so that I can have my favorites and I can just start blasting on day two. I got altars and then I just make currency that way, right? Obviously that's gonna depend on whether like, you know, the Atlas passives are gonna be like profitable or whatever to do that, you know, because we don't have Wrath of Cosmos and Eldritch Gaze anymore. We do have it, but it's like more specific to, you know, one influence than the other. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that like, yeah, I mean, day one doesn't necessarily have to be like, shit, I lost the opportunity to become like rich because I'm not good.
I didn't play Seismic,
As someone who's done the day one boss rushing, and also who's like many people who are like I'm like talk to do it, that shit is not fun, by the way, because you're sitting there with like 2 void fletches in your stash, and you're just sitting there and you're like
and your money's tied
watching the live search. It's like ding, ding, people are undercutting you. You're like,
I'm undercutting.
Yeah, you're not
and you've
wrong.
You've been up for like 30 hours, and you're like, if I go to bed now with all these items in my stash, I'm going to lose all my money. Yeah. And then also, if I don't keep doing sets, I'm not making money. So it's like, you're just like infinitely awake. It's like, it's like not fun, man.
The only time I boss rushed was with a trader, and that was like relatively fine because I wouldn't have to worry about any of that shit. But it ended up me being, like, I ran like I think like 300 shapers in 3 days. And you know, my eyes were bleeding, and I just felt like depressed by the end of it. But it was basically like that. It's like, yeah, sure, we made 10 mirrors in a week, but it's like at what cost? And the thing is though, that's not really the case anymore, by the way. But like bossing now is like you don't make currency from the drops unless you're the first one there. You make money from carries. Like, oh yeah. That's honestly, unfortunately, the problem because GGG tied progression to bosses, aka your void stones and shit.
And you can just avoid all of this and just do expedition on day 4 and make plenty of money.
Yep,
that's how it goes.
Exactly, or just click essences or Alcan for invitations. Like, there's so much stuff to do, and honestly, like, yeah, PoE is a FOMO game, but you don't have to fear. Just have fun, dude. Forehead.
Yeah, exactly.
Just pick your niche. I think that's really important, is what I'm trying to say. And you don't feel forced into playing fucking Seismic or whatever.
Do you guys actually want to just like quickly rattle off some builds for people? Because I'm a complete scrub, so don't ask me. Like, I mean, yeah. I mean, I'll just
got the level juice. So you can go ahead.
You guys talk about.
Oh, so you just using this as like, what will I play?
Well,
So
okay.
best builds are like they're gonna be things like seismic. RF still gonna be pretty baller. Poison concoction. There's gonna be like cold dot. You can play like probably spark still. I think that like some other stuff like explosive trap is still acceptable. Bone shatter. Hopefully it'll be
Yeah, hopefully they
good.
revert that
Like
mastery.
hopefully they revert the mastery because they added the +1 strike as a mastery. When I read that, I was like,
Yeah, like I
let's
wanted
go,
that
that's
forever, dude.
huge.
Yeah,
And then they removed like the strike skills can hit mobs that are 30% further away, and it's like it just lost all QOL that I had, and it like completely took the wind out of my sails. So hopefully there's still time to revert that change, but who knows?
yeah, sure.
Um, Other builds besides that, I think minions are going to be a bit better. Gazzy was
Why is
saying
that?
that. Well, so minions were completely unchanged, but part of the problem with minions is that Arc Nem would like roll over your minions. Like they
Yeah,
just like your minions would get owned, dude. And so with Arc Nem, like not getting power washed, but not having like super bloat anymore, minions are going to be slightly better than they were before, which they were already in like a perfectly fine state. Anybody that was complaining about having to gear up their minion build just wanted to do all the content in the game on a +2 tabula, you know?
yeah. It's like welcome to Path of Exile, where you actually have to
Yeah.
gear your character.
No, well, I don't want to, minion slander all the way.
Nah, slander them. I'm just
But I mean, pretty much everything that's been viable for the last year and a half is going to be pretty good in the upcoming patch, besides things like Spectral Helix or Lightning Strike.
yeah. I'm
Oh,
starting
shit.
Poison
That's
BB,
enough.
so that's what I'm starting, and
Yeah,
I think it's gonna be really
that's good.
good. And I think any of the guys that you see on Max Roll, .gg are gonna be really good. You guys know that all three of us are writing guides for Max Roll, and
Hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored,
yeah,
hashtag
yeah, yeah.
love
No,
my
no.
employers, by the
But
way.
like
No,
we're honestly not,
it's
not
actually,
sponsored to talk
yeah,
about this shit. Like
I believe in
we
whatever we're
take
talking.
ourselves pretty seriously in regards to like for example, I took like fucking 1 week to write the Lightning Strike guide, right? I'm just gonna delete that shit because it's like it's not worth
It'll be
it. So that's the sort of
Just
standard
getting
that we
archived,
like to
but
that we
yeah,
like to
yeah.
have on that site. So
Hell yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, like for my leveling stuff, I poured a lot of passion into each and every article, but uh, it has to be scrapped for like a very new, like improved layout, in my opinion. Like it's much better, but it loses a bit of that labor of love. But because we're so focused on like what do people actually want, I'm changing up my entire leveling stick that I do over there,
Yeah. I mean,
which I
okay,
still think
so
is really good.
I have a question for you guys, related to builds. Because like I got some wisdom from you guys a few times, but I think a lot of people could appreciate it as well. What do you want to look for on a league starter to make sure it's okay? Because I'm sure a lot of people want to try something new, right? It's like, okay, poison concoction again. It's like, okay, so how much damage should you look for? Like, assuming like it's like okay, not like full melee, and how much defense? Like, what kind of EHP should you be looking for on your league starter? Stuff like that. Do you guys got any like quick tips for the boys?
I never look at like hard numbers. The amount of times I followed a build and it's like this can farm 12 shapers per second, and then I roll up into like a T3 map and it's the worst build known to
yeah,
mankind.
Oh
Or I
no.
watched the video for it. Basically, if your content creator doesn't have a video showing what the build looks like, be careful of the build because it could be complete swamp ass as far as
yeah.
like how it plays. Um, Always follow like things that are maybe not tried and tested, and you have to do what has been established as the meta. But if you're following a build guide that's just a bunch of numbers, I don't believe in that. I believe a lot more in like this build has potential because of numbers. Let me try and make something out of that. But I would never like blindly like follow just like, oh, have 10,000 EHP and you'll be perfectly fine. Like, nah, I don't.
I think
It's so subjective.
it is very subjective, and it's very subjective towards the kind of content that you want to be farming, right? I know people want to have like the jack of all trades, but I think for a jack of all trades to actually be good at everything, it has to give up on a lot of things. Like for example, take seismic trap, it's good at everything, gives up a lot of quality of life. Take
Yep.
lightning conduit, gives up a lot of quality of life as well. BFBB also a little bit, but like maybe a bit less. Like you know what I mean. There's always gonna be a downside, right? So for example, like I like mapping and I like going fast on League Start and I love explosions. That's why I choose Poison Blade Vortex. the only thing that I'm looking forward for this build to do in regards to single target is, can I do my quest bosses with it so I can get my void stones without having to like, stress for them? And the answer to that is yes. I can do that on like less than 1 mil damage. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, like as long as it's able to do that, and then it can scale later on to like be a fast mapper, be comfortable so I don't spam die, so it has to have good layers of defense, like then that's all you need from a build. But if you want a strictly boss, then you don't need any of that stuff, because you could just focus purely on damage, and you can manually dodge things. But the thing is that you got to consider then is, how am I going to progress my Atlas? How am I going to get to the point where I have enough currency to fund my build and to do bosses? So there's all of these things that you need to consider when planning your Leaguestarter. And I think it's just don't be deceived into thinking that you should be farming uber bosses or you should be farming maps fast. Just do what you want to do and find the build that fits that niche. I think it's very important to do that. But also, there's so many builds that are garbage, so maybe ask somebody first before you want to roll into one of these builds. Like, for example, you see like some people fucking posting builds before patch notes. Like, yes, you can generally know if a build is going to be good before patch notes, but you should definitely wait till patch notes to post it in case something happens to it. So you can be like, oh, okay, so it lost a bit of damage, but it's still good. Like, or it could be Lightning Strike, when it's like, it's just dog ass. Like, it's like, yeah.
I think just to add to that, my one piece of advice for people would be pick a starter which has got the early game planned out, because like more than anything, the thing that's going to kill your hype and your enjoyment of a new league is going through the story and getting like stuck dying like a billion times on like Act 5 dominance or whatever, right? That sucks. So if the people have put in like the time to like map out your leveling and your early map progression, like with the gear or whatever, that is like a pretty good sign for like a good build. Because yeah, like doing ZDPS on a quest boss, that shit sucks, man.
No, I totally agree. I think another valuable thing you guys can do for League starters is to get multiple sources, right? Like if you only follow tytykiller and he gives you some advice as far as like, oh yeah, I think this build's really good, and then you go over to someone else like Grim and he's like, actually the build is really clunky to play and it requires a lot of setup and a lot of APM. Those are more things to consider than just like taking one person's opinion at face value and be like, oh, Tata said it was good, so.
Do you want to know what I also think the ultimate cheat code is?
What's that?
Is if you have a build that you think is good, go look in the previous league's SSF ladder, see if anybody actually played it. Because if the top players are able to play something in SSF, it means it's fucking good. Like, it's worth it, right? It's sort of also what sort of gave me the like. I went to the SSF PoE Ninja and I saw Manny 2 playing BB Blade Vortex Poison on League Start, and he was like fucking rank 2 XP. It's like, alright, yep, that's my build next league. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean that also does mean like there's not many builds to pick from, like
sure,
in a lot of cases. So yeah.
Yeah, but it's sort of like
if someone that has done something, use that for inspiration rather than just purely some random guy that you found.
Yep,
I agree.
Yeah, totally.
I've done that as well.
Hell yeah.
But you'd be surprised that SSF's got like a big variety. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Go on.
No. I was gonna say I gotta leave here in a bit.
Yeah.
Before I go,
for 2 hours.
Overall rating of the league so far.
Wait, of the league? Yeah. Well, I'd give it like a 9 out of 10, but it's gonna have to lose some points for nerfs and removing jewels, so it's gonna get a 7.
7, I feel like, is a conservative number. Yeah, I can agree with a 7. I just haven't seen enough, man. I'm really like on the cautious side. I think I'm gonna sit on a 7.
On 7 as well. It was a 7 for me until I read patch notes, and then it became a 5.
Fuck.
Fair enough. Honestly, yeah. It really depends on how hyped you are for the mechanic, right? If you're like, that shit looks pog, then yeah, you're probably like a 9, and then you came down to a 7 or a 6. But if you're like, it's kind of whatever, it's like,
I think there might be like a couple of things, like if the teasers over the next few days are like all boring as hell, it could go down to like a 4. But if they look really cool and the mechanic looks insane, it could go up to a 6. So that's where I'm at.
Oh shit! Well, yeah, there you go, man. I mean, we'll have to see. Proof is in the pudding. Let's see if they put out what they've promised. please be
I'm
rewarding.
really excited for it though. Just give it a chance. Would be very nice if a game is fun to play.
Yeah,
that'd
be
definitely. And I guess so that
stuff.
we don't drag on too long, I want to thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate
Good,
it. I'm going to type in chat, check Tyty. That is his Twitch. I didn't type it wrong, right? That is correct. That is its Twitch. And I can also link Grimro's YouTube. He's going to be a lot more active on YouTube than he is on Twitch, but you can also check out his Twitch. Can you write your Twitch in the Twitch chat?
Oh, true.
But here's his YouTube. That is Grimro. And this is twitch.tv. Grimro. Oh yeah, you can shout out now. There you go. Yo, good mods. There it is. So yeah, you can follow the stream. You can check them out there. You can definitely check out Grimro's channel here. And
thanks boys.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice having a chat for sure.
It was fun. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah.
Let me know if you guys need anything.
Thanks, Tyty. Love you, dude. Peace out, man.
All right, I'm gonna peace out as well. Enjoy the stream.
Yo, thanks, thanks, Grim. Thanks for coming on. Love you, dude.
Bye.
Peace.
Oh, you should probably post this to YouTube. Lots of people ask in the chat.
Yeah. I recorded. I'm gonna post that shit. My yearly YouTube post. Hey, there it is, chat. I did. Oh, yo, I did notice his raid, and thank you so much for the raid, Ziz. Of course. Thank you so much, Zizarin. I didn't want to interrupt. I didn't want to interrupt the podcast, man. Zizarin with the raid with the 2,000 people. Thank you so much, Zizarin. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you. I really appreciate the support. And Woodio as well with the raid 21 minutes ago. Thank you, Woodio. Thank you for the raid. Love you, Woody. The leveling guide for Poison BV is actually already up on Max Roll, but it's for Poison, Bladefall, Blade Blast. So yeah, you can check it out there.